Hey everyone, welcome to Roll for Combat Live. I'm your host, Stephen Glicker, and with me is
Mark Seifter and
World Builder.
we're
I
still
don't know if
getting
you
it.
guys could just hear that,
We're still
but
we're
literally like an ad started playing on my computer from this stream that I have up right
well, I guess you're paying our bills. I guess it's a good excuse. So he had a bit of a delay. But yes, we're trying out something new. We're trying to be more professional. I know it's crazy for everyone who's like a regular listener. But this is the stream that everyone wants to know is we're going to talk about Bob World Builder's first real convention. And he went to one earlier this year, went to too many games, but this is his first real gaming convention, PAX Unplugged, which is pretty big. And like anyone who goes to their very first convention, it was very normal. Everyone who goes to their first convention gets to meet Matt Mercer, play a game with Ginny D, get to hang out with Professor Dungeon Master and myself, as well as, everyone else that just was like handheld and shown everywhere to go and everything to do. Totally normal convention. No,
that'll
everyone
happen
gets
to you
do
too
that.
if you go to PAX Unplugged.
Yes, if you go to PAX Unplugged, you'll get to do all that and more.
Asterix may not happen to you.
Yes, definitely will that happen. I always think about so when I was in college, when I was a senior and all my friends were seniors, we had a freshman who was like a friend of one of our senior friends' family, and the freshman got to be in our rooms. And this freshman was like the most spoiled freshman in history because he got to hang out with all of us, the seniors, get to go to all the parties, everything. Like everything you'd ever want. And he was just like totally spoiled. And I felt like that was Bob. It was like our decades of experience and going to these conventions he got in 3 days, and now he is a pro. So
now. I don't know if I'd say pro, just an amateur who has been exposed to a lot of experience now.
a lot of experience in a very short period of time. So anyhow, once again, welcome to Roll for Combat Live. We are here every week, Wednesday, usually at 3 p.m. Sometimes we change it up, but usually it's today. And we start off the show with talking about some news items, and all these are actually related more or less to PAX. And then we'll get into the main topic, which is an echo. Do you hear an echo, you say?
An echo?
I don't think there's an echo.
I don't think
I was thinking it could have been me because I'm not using headphones right now, so I turned my computer volume down a little bit. But...
Oh, there you go. All right. We'll talk about that. And it's funny, a lot of people thought, I don't know, some people said, oh, it's going to be quiet. I'm like, it's not going to be quiet. It's PAX, man. It's like, it's always going to be busy during the PAX week. Do like and subscribe. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to say hi in chat. But Super Chat's always get answered right away. So first of all, I'll do the easy one as people are getting in.
Yeah, let's do the quick and easy
We'll
one.
do a quick and easy one. So quick and easy, Dungeons and Dragons is having U.S. postal stamps created. And I did a thing about postal stamps a couple of weeks ago. I was talking about how, Elvis was the very first postal stamp ever to have someone on it who wasn't, like a president or, like someone famous in the government or even something like the Washington Monument. And it was the beginning of these types of stamps that make billions of dollars for the post office. So now they have like Mickey Mouse stamps and Marvel stamps. They got everything. It's pop culture stamps, they're called. And they were the very first ones. And now it is a multi-billion-dollar business. And before that, this didn't exist until the 70s. And so when I saw this, I was thinking, that's the big time, man. You get your own stamp. And they're getting 10 stamps. And how far have we gone when in the 80s, D&D was considered devil worship to the point that Stranger Things featured it, and I remember going through it, and it's a very real thing.
Certainly, the government would never have been willing to collaborate like that at that time. There were just enough people in the government who literally thought that it was evil magic that would corrupt your soul like for real.
Yeah, it's so weird. But not only that, some of the stamps, I mean, they have a lich, okay? They have Tiamat. They have, it looks like Dritz. They have a purple worm. They have like someone on like looks like a nightmare leading a legion that could be hell because it's like red in the background. So I'm like, they didn't even go like with like paladins, you know? They went with like kind of even I think the stamps are a little controversial, and I mean maybe 30
like
years ago
it could have been a cute owl bear.
Right. Like exactly. It is an interesting group of stamps, but I'm actually excited because what they do if you go to the post office, you can buy the stamps, but what they usually do is they also have the stamps in like a placard that has extras, like sometimes like extra images, or sometimes the stamps go with the image around the placard, and then you can even get it framed. Like look it up, you can get pretty fancy stuff, because I actually have DC comic stamps, and it's not just a stamp, it's like the stamp with all this comic art around it, and I've had those framed in my house for about 20 years now. So that's how they make their money, because you buy it as art, you spend 50 $100, and then you never use them, and it's pure profit. So good idea. Are you guys going to buy any D&D stamps and hang them up in your house, or no?
Kind of tempting, but I don't know. I've never I don't collect a lot of things anyway, and like stamp collecting seems like an interesting way to start. So I don't know. Like I do have like RPG books, so I guess it would kind of make sense with that. But that's about it.
I think it's. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: like if I were gonna buy these stamps, it would pretty much just be to save them as art, because like we buy stamps probably once a year, like maybe even less than that, because we just mail so few things.
Oh, so, wow! What a world! What a world!
Yeah,
it's like mail. What's this mail you speak of? What is this post office you speak
every
of?
time I actually have to go to a post office for something, I feel like I have to relearn. Like, and I would walk in there like a total idiot. I'm like, okay, I have this thing, and they're like, okay, yeah, just do this, and I'm like, all right, thank you. And that's it. It's always like relatively simple, but yeah, I have to like learn how to do it every time.
There is no beholder. There is a red dragon, and there is a lich. There is Tiamat. There is a purple worm. There's Dritz. It looks like there's a green copper dragon. I can't quite tell. Kind of coppery, kind of green on there, but they're nice. They're nice.
You say there's a gelatinous cube?
No, there's no gelatinous cube. There's a maze. There's someone caught in a maze. Well, the gelatinous cube would just be clear. You wouldn't see anything.
I know, it'd be hilarious.
It'd be like, where is it? It's all white.
Sure. I feel like they're always
do an invisible stalker stamp, and it's just a white stamp.
Yeah.
Nothing on it.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's see.
The mimic stamp that just looks like a regular stamp.
It's a mimic, and they're all the same. They're just like one stamp. It's just like they're all like, yeah. The thing is, no one would know what that is. The thing is, they have to appeal to everyone. So, that's right.
I guess that makes sense. That's why they have to pick things that are immediately recognizable, even if you're not into it. I guess.
Keep in mind, any of them could be a mimic. But it does say D&D. D&D USA. It does not say a D&D or Dungeons and Dragons, just D&D. So look for those. I actually went to the website. By the way, it's so funny. Does this bother anyone when they do this? The stamp release marks the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, described by its owners as, quote, the world's greatest role-playing game.
We talked about that last week.
I know.
How everybody always says that, and like, it's not just Wizards and it's not just D&D. Everybody talks themselves up like that. And it's not my cup of tea, but I get that everybody does it.
I know, but that's the official press release.
I was going to say, I feel like with D&D these days, like there was a period where even a lot of third-party people would say that, like compatible with, and they would say like the world's greatest role-playing game or whatever, because they couldn't say
legally
D&D or whatever.
Yes, legally.
But I feel like a lot of people have switched to like the world's first role-playing game or something.
Yes,
or 5e.
Like the oldest.
Yes.
Yeah, or just 5e,
yeah.
of course.
Yes.
Yeah. The oldest, yeah.
Yeah, it's the oldest I've seen too. Yeah, that legally, good thing 5e came along because because I have to do that too. So everything of mine just has the 5e stamp on it, and
Yep.
it works. It's the next best thing.
You can see it on the bottom right now of this street. There's a little 5e thing that's there.
Right. Look at that. It's 5e and Foundry and Path Builder and Pathfinder. So that's that. Let's talk about the next quick topic. That was the appetizer topic. Let's talk about a little bit of a beefier topic. So Dungeons and Dragons, and I went to the talk. Had a really big talk at PAX last week. And the talk itself, which we'll probably talk about later in this episode, was kind of weird because it was and I've seen them do this a million times. It was a 10-minute talk stretched into an hour. Because all they really had to talk about were some new books releasing next year, like 3 adventures, a little bit of information on the player's handbook, and that's it. And it only took them maybe 10 minutes to go through everything, and even that felt like a stretch. So the first 50 minutes of the talk was, hey, let's talk about the history of Dungeons and Dragons adventures, and what they mean to you. And that's what it was. And you can kind of feel it in the room. Like, people were sort of like shifting around in their seats. Like, where's the juicy stuff? Where's the good stuff? Okay, great. You're talking about, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Awesome. Where's the new stuff? And, well, they did talk about the new stuff, but strangely, what ended up happening is they talked about the 2024 core rulebook, and they showed some pictures from the player's handbook. They talked about Vecna, Eve of Ruin. They talked about Quests of the Infinite Staircase. They talked about the Making of D&D book, which actually I want to talk about because that thing looks amazing. And then they just said that it's coming out. But on Twitter, they had the same pictures, but with release dates. And the release dates they had was the core rulebook, being the player's handbook, comes out May 21st. Vecna, Eve of Ruin comes out May 21st. Quest from the Infinite Staircase comes out July 16th. And Making of D&D comes out June 18th. Now, are those dates real? Well, guess what, everybody? You all are going to have an exclusive that no one else has. Because I just remembered a conversation that I had with Wizard producers at Gen Con. And I actually mentioned this on one of our past Roll for Combat lives. These dates, I think, are real. Mark, I'm thinking you're going to probably remember this. Remember I said I was talking to someone, I don't want to get them in trouble, as I was saying, oh, do you work from home mostly? Or do you get to work remotely, or do you have to go into the office? And they said, no, we're mostly remote now, but we do have to go into the office to look at the galleys. What they do is they actually
during the approvals pass.
Right. They actually print out the book. I'm going to show you what galleys look like in case you're curious. Like this is galleys.
Paizo used to have this too before things went remote, where you would have these galleys. And everyone would pass it around and put the red mark, or put post-it notes usually in it with a
galley from
an arrow indicating where the post-it note applied.
Yep.
To get them changed.
So they said, oh yeah, we're in the office now going through the galleys for Vecna. That's the new book, which means that book, I think, is coming out May 21st because they were looking over the galleys.
They're going through the galleys now. That's about
that was in August. They were going through the galleys in August.
If they were going through the galleys in August, they easily could get it in by then, depending on, I guess, depends on what their process is. Also, they print, they have their own printing, right? They don't print in China. Is that correct?
They print all over the place. They do print in the United States.
If you print in China, you have to check when Lunar New Year is, and that will factor in when you have to get things over. There's like a hiatus before you can get some of the stuff that's printed, and so it will adjust when things.
Well, keep in mind, I'm 90% sure because they said that they were still doing the final layouts for the core rule books at the convention. And I believe that. And from what I heard is that
Well, they shouldn't have had the approvals galley in August. If they're, I guess, if the adventure knew that
I
nothing
think
in
they
adventure was going
pre-printed
to
it.
change.
I think it's printed. I think Vecna's printed. I think
That
Quest
makes
for the, I
sense.
think it's all printed. I think the making
Maybe they
D&D
wrote the adventure first because they knew that none of the changes would affect it and just completed it. And were like, that's out of the way. We're saving it for launch date of the new revision. Now let's do the big stuff.
Yeah, I think these dates. First of all, I don't think these dates were an accident because everyone's like, "Oh, they accidentally released it and then they took it down," and then it's like, no, I don't think that was an accident. I think they actually got smart. At least this is what I would do. They accidentally release it and then they take it down, saying, "Oopsie." You know how much press they've gotten for this accidental release of dates, and we're all talking about it. I think that got more.
But don't
press.
you think there would have been just as much press if they were like, "Here's the date of the release"?
No, it's the best of both worlds because if they have those dates, they have to stick to them and they have to start coming out with regular updates. This is the best of every world. They can change these dates and say there's a mistake or they need to push it back a month or two.
Right.
They're like, "Oh, those were never official. We never officially released anything."
Yeah.
So I think that it's probably something similar to what you said, Stephen. My guess is someone wanted to hype it. My guess is that it wasn't as coordinated or as like much of a Machiavellian scheme as you made it, but it was otherwise the same. As someone wanted to release it and legitimately was like, yeah, this is what we think it's going to be. Let's tell everybody for marketing or for whatever reason. Another person's like, wait, hold on. We're not 100% sure. We could get in trouble if we give this now and we have to change it. And so to the end, it comes to the same result where everyone talks about it, talks about the fact that it was removed, which can be a good thing in some ways, that it fuels speculation, and they're not held to it because it got removed. So I think it was probably like one hand and another moving in like not in parallel.
Yeah. And so, Stephen, the dates were May for the player's handbook.
Yeah.
Was it June for Vecna and then July for Staircase one?
May for Vecna and the player's handbook. They're going to come out on the same day, which is May 21st, which is actually a superb day to come out. That's actually a really good day.
Why is that? Because I'm curious, like, if you think they're, so now they've released this date kind of unofficially in a way so that if they don't make it, they could change it. But like, you think they are aiming for May?
Yeah, because it's the end of the school year, or for a lot of high schools, a lot of elementary schools, and so forth. Also, colleges start to end around there. Summer is the huge con season, so you want to be at the beginning of the con season to get as much press and hype as possible. You don't want to be at the end of the con season. I mean, you can be at the end of the con season, which is usually August Gen Con, but you want to try to get to the beginning of the con season, so then you'll be at like every convention, and you want to try to get this book out there. You want to get playtest, whether they want, and they don't have to do the playtest themselves, not playtest, but actually people playing the game, and get the hype out. And then by the time people come back to school in September, like there's been a huge amount of like drummed up interest, information about it. So that's it's sort of the best time to launch a role-playing product is around May. So WoTC does do cons. Yeah, WoTC, they're like, they don't do cons. Well, they're starting to. They were at PAX. We saw them. I mean, they were there.
And I think
Gen Con too, right?
If you're not going to do cons, it's even more important to get it out before the cons, because you want to let other people who are at the cons kind of do your stuff for you. Whereas if you're going to do a con, then you might want to release it at one of the big cons that you're going to you're going to go to and make your marquee con.
Yeah. And so, by the way, I want to say something, and Mark, back me up. People, I can't seem to win. When I'm bashing on WoTC, people say how mean I am to WoTC. Now I'm saying how I really like the VTT, and I'm excited to see the new Dungeons & Dragons. And they're like, oh, now you're all pro WoTC. I'm like, I'm not pro or con anything. I'm pro Dungeons & Dragons and role-playing. I'm very excited to see the new game. I can't wait. I mean,
I'm going to back you up, but also explain why it's pretty expected. So Stephen will change his mind based on what he sees, and he was negative about things because he was like worried about the OGL and some of the ways that things went. But Steven, it's not like there's some person on the internet named Steven Hater 777 who is the same guy who comes on and says, now Steven's a shill. Now Steven's a hater. It's that the way social media and like comments on YouTube work is that when people are motivated, usually by the fact that they disagree or that there's something they say that they don't like, to respond is when you get a response.
True.
And that's why some YouTubers have said like making a mistake in their video is a way to drive engagement, like because 50 people will correct their error in the comments and the algorithm will make it seem like their video is more popular and they'll get way more views, is because if you're wrong or people disagree, then they're going to call it out. And it's not the same people. So whoever's in the audience who are still very bad at WoTC for what they did, which is, it's justifiable. They did some stuff during the OGL that was not very nice. The executives pulled. They're going to be mad generally or disagree maybe when you say things that are more positive. And the people who are ready to forgive or who maybe never minded the OGL stuff that happened before and are watching are always going to be like, why is Steven's being so negative? So it's really unsurprising that this happened. But I do agree, and I appreciate the fact, Stephen, that you'll change your mind based on new evidence instead of just always.
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm evidence-based, and I will change my mind based on what I'm seeing, not what I'm necessarily feeling, even though I do feel things. But you know what I mean? I'm like, look, they're doing a pretty good job now. I spoke to a lot of people at WoTC, and they, at least the ones I spoke to, they seem to acknowledge that, they weren't part of the team that made those decisions. And B,
I've been saying that the whole time.
Yeah, and they felt they hated it. Like they didn't want anything to do with that. They're just trying to make good games and get it out there. Because I was talking to the developers mostly, actually exclusively.
I know that's got to be the case. Obviously, they had NDAs or whatever.
Right.
So, like, anytime I talked to anybody like that was during the time, I would always just like not even bring it up and just say, "I'm sure you're going through a very stressful time right now, and I want to give you support during that. I know that you're not involved with any of this because they aren't. Like, workers are not." Generally do not have a say in what the top executives are doing, and the workers at WoTC love the product and they want to put in they want to make something great. They are not trying to do weird OGL schemes. That was entirely a different group of people.
So by the way, I'm thinking it might come out in May. I mean, this is just a player's handbook.
I think it's likely. If they even had slides at one point that said that date, I think it's likely and probably whoever told them to take it down was just hedging their bets.
Yeah. Maybe
it's possible they knew that they wouldn't hit that date and that's why they took it down. But I think no, I think they're just being cautious when they took it down. That's my guess. We'll see how accurate our predictions are when May comes around.
Of the book I'm most excited about by far, which I don't know who the audience for this is, they're putting out a Making of D&D book. And that comes out June 18th. That is a 550-page book that has notes and correspondence between all the original creators of Dungeons and Dragons from 1970 to 1974. And it's all compiled in a single book for history.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious about that because so far, the only things I've seen like it have come from either Goodman Games, because they do the original Adventures Reincarnated series with they'll have notes about the original adventure and then a 5e conversion, but interviews with creators. And this other company, I guess you say, Fellowship of the Thing, who are the guys who created the documentary Secrets of Blackmore. Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they have tons of original notes and files from Dave Arneson. So I'm curious then if this book is really just going to be Gygax's stuff.
I don't know. Ben Riggs has some of the original files that were sent to him when he was doing his book, because he was on our show talking about that too. So it'll be interesting to see which originals are there. And just from the topic of being someone who thinks history is kind of interesting, and especially when it's related to something I'm already interested in, it's cool to see these many primary sources from this many perspectives. And obviously they're going to curate what they have, I guess, or maybe they won't.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be a wild west of statements, and some of them will be unflattering, which I would appreciate even more, but I think they're going to curate it. But everybody curates their sources when they create history, and that's why we have differing viewpoints on things that happen, even as recently as I guess some of that early stuff isn't that recent anymore. It's like almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, but the thing is, WoTC has done a lot to sort of erase Gary Gygax and the whole history of D&D. I mean, like, I know it rubbed me the wrong way, and I know a lot of people's, like, if you went to the D&D movie, the name Hasbro was like splashed all over the place. You know, I was like, you know, it feels like they've done everything in their power to erase any history of TSR and original Dungeons and Dragons, anything before basically 5th edition. You know, it's like if it before 5th edition,
like I feel
it
like
didn't
they're
exist.
perfectly willing to acknowledge that the old games exist, but like do to some extent want to not, you know, they don't want to take credit for the elements that, you know, could be perceived as problematic, and they want to take credit, but they do want to take credit for all the elements that could be perceived as fun. And that's pretty much the bottom line.
Yeah. Well,
I think that I know people were talking about like the credits being pretty random on the D&D movie. I seem to remember also like Ed Greenwood was not listed there, even though it was in the Forgotten Realms, which like he originally created. That may not, my memory may not be accurate, but like I think they just decided who was going to be listed, and deciding things for credits is always a contentious topic. I'm of the opinion that we should give it to as many people as possible and make sure everyone knows what contributions people made. I've always been like kind of more in favor of more credits and celebrating the people who are creators.
well,
Yeah, I mean, it's such a simple thing to do. Like relatively speaking, it's like, it's not like he asked for a cameo in the movie or something. You know, it's just put his name somewhere on a slide, basically at the end. It's so yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I believe it only goes up to the release. I think it's from 1970 and 1974, which is when D&D came out. So I believe it's everything prior, which is pretty smart, because then you can say, oh, this was all before D&D, and then they don't have to... There's like legal issues. It's like, oh, we don't have to, you know, like say, oh, this person created this and this was part of first edition D&D. It's like, no, these are private notes that they use to create the first edition. So everything you're reading is nothing but correspondence, and it's nothing to do with the game. It's just...
So you said you said around 70 to 74. So it's like to original D&D, not even like first edition. Yeah,
like original. Yeah, right. So it just is from 1970 to 1974, before the very first, what was it, Men and Monsters came out. I forgot what it was, one of those. So that's where it goes to. But it's a big book, and there's some pictures of it, and it's cool because it has like everything's in a typewriter, and they have like sketches of dragons, and they're all, you know, done by them, and looks like kids did them. It's really funny, and I was like, this looks great.
I feel like the art is like one of the reasons that I own some of the, you know, first edition books, just because it's so like iconic almost, you know.
Yeah, it's that book. But who's the audience for this book? I mean, like, okay, I'm gonna buy it, but I'm an old grognard. Like, all the grognards might buy it, but these, because here's the thing, most of the people I know who are older don't play D&D anymore, because 5th edition is so far from what we used to play that they've either moved to Pathfinder or something else.
Interesting, because I feel like 5th edition tried to do more of a callback towards older editions compared to 4th. And I would say Pathfinder is less... I'd say 5th edition is probably more similar to the... Not that either of them is that similar to the older editions than Pathfinder is to the older editions. Well, again, not that either is that similar. OSR is way
who's going to buy this? Who's going to buy this book? I'm like, I'll buy it. But like, are people who are... You know,
I think it's a coffee table book. Kurth said that in chat. Yeah. It's something you put on your table, and people can flip through and read it and be like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah, because what did they have? Well, a couple years ago, they published Art and Arcana, which
Yes.
was like art from these old ones, all the like old editions,
Yeah.
I should say,
Mhm.
all the way through modern. And there was just a more recent one that I can't remember the title of right now. Is it Legends and Lore or something?
Something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and maybe it didn't even come out yet, but it's I've heard about this recently that I think
Yeah.
is a similar spin to the Art and Arcana book. So yeah, this feels
Even
very much like
Pathfinder
that
has one that's like
coffee
that.
table style. Yeah.
Yeah, although they had a very neat name for it because it was the Wayne Reynolds, all of his covers in big art. So it was called The Art of War because his like middle initial is A and he always does his artist signature as WAR. So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, thank you for putting it out for me at least, because I'm gonna buy it. So
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm also interested in this book. It's literally just the fact that it's like 500 pages. Like,
Over.
I'm wondering
yeah.
when it's the kind of thing where it almost has to be a coffee table book. I don't, and it's also because it's going to probably be the size of a standard D&D book. So you have this giant 500-page
No, and
book.
it's probably gonna cost like $100. Like it's
Yeah,
it's
so-
gonna be expensive. I'm sure.
Indestructible thinks that it includes scans of the white box material.
It has
Oh.
well, there's some pictures. If you look online, there's scans from. There's like 4
Well, and that
pages.
would make sense if it has like basically the booklets, like high quality scans of the actual
I believe it
booklets, like
does too,
complete
yeah.
in there. That would
Mhm.
be interesting.
Yeah, I believe it has. They just sort of talked. It was all over the place, but the main thing they did say, and like I give them credit again. I'm sorry, I'm not hating on WoTC, but they wanted to preserve history, and this is a pretty good way to do it. And I'm like, good, thank you. I mean, like, I'm thankful they're doing this.
Yeah, we'll
because-
see.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
curious whether it's going to be like the messy everything or whether it's going to be curated because it could be to
Right.
preserve history or it could be to
Rewrite history.
as Winston Churchill is, like history
Yes.
shall be my judge and I shall write the history book.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much.
Yeah, the fact that it's the
Yeah.
history of coming from what we know D&D to be today. It's like, well, they're going to say what they need to say for D&D today to feel like it had this wholesome and beautiful origin. So
Yeah.
not to say that the origins were like dark and horrible, but
Yeah. But usually you're going to get something sanitized. That's what I kind of expect. So if I get something messy and complete, I will just give like mad props to that because that's not my expectation when a corporation puts out a history of their own product, but that would be outstanding.
So one quick little topic, and then we'll get to the main topic. So Shadowrun is putting out the first edition of their game. They're reprinting the 1988 version of Shadowrun,
Wild.
and they're up to the 6th edition, which came out in 2019. Why would you put out, like, okay, I can see if D&D did it, and they did recently, like they've been reprinting, like I could see Dungeons and Dragons doing it or some other big games, but Shadowrun? I mean, was there a call for a first edition version? Like,
So here's my guess. Pure speculation. I do not know. I have no connection to the Shadowrun community of figuring this out. But in general, when you have additions and iterations, there are attempts to like improve gameplay, and you would hope that the 6th edition has done so significantly from the very first edition. But that first edition came out in 1989. And the people who were young and got that in 1989 now are kind of a demographic that are older and have more disposable income and are very nostalgic about when it was 1989, as evidenced by the many times on this show that we've talked about 80s movies, Stephen. And so I think the hope is that people who have lost their copy since then or just didn't have one, maybe their friend was the GM and by the time they got in they weren't making them or they were hard to find, would be like, yes, I remember my first edition Shadowrun from 1989. I want to have one too. That's my guess. But I'm making it up. I don't have a lot of good evidence to go
I
on.
think it's a pretty strong guess. Yeah, like Stephen, you kind of alluded to this, but it's like the DM's Guild and or Drive Through RPG might be on both really, but like hosts tons of D&D books from the 80s and 90s and I guess even the 70s. But like digital versions, and some of them have print on demand availability. And like you'll see comments on these books from people who had them and got rid of them at some point. And so I think it's, Shadowrun. I don't know anything about the game, and I assume it has to be a much, much, much smaller audience than who would buy these D&D reprints. But it's like, hey, if they have the audience to do it, like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, you can. There's actually, I looked at it right now. It's actually on Drive-Through RPG, and you can get it as a PDF for $8, and you can even get it print on demand for 12. So it is available. Like the Drive-Through RPG has almost, anything that's on there is almost always print on demand, and you can find.
So if it's print on demand for $12, then and that means people can already get it. So what's I guess like
that is interesting.
Maybe
what's
they're
that
doing
value
that.
add? What are they
Special
going to
about the new
do
one.
that makes it that different from the print on demand version?
I wonder. Well, did you guys hear? This is like a bit of a tangent, so we don't have to go down this too long.
Mhm.
But I know that there's like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG
Yes.
that
Oh,
has
yeah, there
recently
is.
just been re-kickstarted, I think.
It just
and
finished.
it's like, I don't know if it's actually a new game, but I heard it's like using some of the same art and or artists from the
Yes,
original.
it is.
So I don't know if it's like a reimagining of that original, but yeah, maybe Shadowrun's trying to
Everyone's doing everyone's remastering. It's a remaster. It's a yet another remaster. It's like take
But
what's
that
old.
old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG was out a long time ago. I remember
know.
talking about it with someone who played it, and like one of the animal mutants that you could be had this really busted thing of getting a lot of attacks that they were explaining to me. But this was a while ago. This is not like just like a game that came out recently is getting a small remaster a few years later. This is like, I would have to check the date on it, but it's a lot of years.
Yeah, no, it just finished up on the Kickstarter. I think it did like 1 million plus. It did very well.
I see some comments here saying with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's not a new game, it's a reprint, but with new art. So I could see something like that maybe for Shadowrun too.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's a 1985 game.
Wow, that's pretty old.
September 1985.
There you
So they did do. They tried to do a second edition in 1997 that but their license got ended in 2000, and a summary of the rules came out in 1998. Apparently, so like it's been in some kind of a like weird purgatory for a while, and I guess now they're able to get it out again, which is cool.
All right, so let's get to the topic of the hour, the main topic. Everyone, do like and subscribe. We have like 1/10 the number of likes we need, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this picture here, where it's, I believe, me and Bob and Grace World Destroyer and Professor DM and Mrs. Professor DM and that guy Matt Mercer, is that his name? I don't remember. Matt something. So we're going to talk about what we chatted with Matt, and we'll talk about our experiences at PAX. And I find this fascinating because this was Bob's first real convention, which is always fun to see what he thought of a convention, especially a modern day convention, because I've probably been to 500 conventions. We're very different than conventions now, to say the least. And it's just, I've been around so long, it's hard to know what it's like. And I've always wanted to kind of get this perspective. But we will start from the beginning, which was, I came in on Thursday, and I just really hung out with Professor and Jessica Redikoff, and Mrs. Professor, and went out to dinner. We played some Wingspan. I invited Bob, but Bob already ordered dinner, so he couldn't go out with us. Oh well. And you just had a relaxing Thursday, right? You just came in and just relaxed.
No, I definitely told you about this Friday morning on Thursday. Well, maybe you're joking, or maybe you don't remember.
I think he's joking.
But, okay. Well, yeah, Thursday night. Yeah, it was we were invited to this gathering of sorts at a barcade in Philly that had a lot of the same people who I met at the Wizards of the Coast Summit. but a ton of people I also didn't know. So yeah, this was like a thing hosted by Wizards of the Coast. And it was a great way to kick it off because it was kind of like, hey, saw you at the beginning of the year and at a terrible time when we were all like pissed off at this game. And now here we are again. Things are a little bit better. And, just like getting to see those faces again was great. And getting to see some new people because that was actually technically at that on Thursday night was like when I first met Ginny. I met the Dungeon Dudes very briefly. Like there were some people from Ghostfire Gaming there. Pointy Hat Antonio D'Amico was there, but yeah, and I also talked to like the people I hung out with most at the summit, which was like Josiah from Dungeon Dad, Ted from Nerd Immersion, and yeah, like a lot of other people, honestly. So that was fun. If anything, it was just like it was hard. Like I was surprised we stayed as long as we did because it was just so loud. Couldn't really hear anybody. Like I don't really go to bars for this very reason that it's just impossible to actually like talk to people unless you're screaming. So I'm surprised I didn't lose my voice like for the entire con just from that. But yeah, it was fun nonetheless. And that yeah, it was a great like opportunity to be there too. But I wish I could have been in two places at once because we were otherwise going to be playing some DCC that night.
Yeah, we played we were thinking of playing some DC. Well, just to show how little of a chill I am, I didn't get invited to that party, so I didn't go. Maybe next time invite me, or next time I'll crash with you.
Maybe next time.
I know. Now you got to go to the cool party, and I missed out, which that actually sounds like a fun. It's funny because I saw everyone you just mentioned. I just saw them walking around the con, not actually at the party itself. So, oh well. But yeah, that sounds like it was a good time had by all. But then we said, all right, we're going to meet for breakfast, and we're going to meet at the Notary. That's where the professor was staying, actually, by the way. So that's why we chose
he
it.
was there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's where they were staying.
I just figured, I really thought it was a random hotel that none of us were at.
No,
Okay.
no. It's a good location, too, because it's right next to the convention. So we all decide to meet up, have breakfast, and now my back was to Matt, but you were facing him, and you were the one who noticed him. So you were the one who had to keep failing your will saves to like stop staring at him. I didn't have to worry about it.
I mean, I think I said it right away when he came in because I was just like, I was, just, are you kidding me? Like, there he is. He just like walks in the room, and the way the room was set up, even though we were kind of like across this restaurant from each other, it was just like an aisle between us. So it was just this clear line of sight, kind of at an angle from like where I was sitting to where Matt was sitting. And so it was just super bizarre. Like that, of all the, like if he sat at the other end of the restaurant, would have never known he was there. But it was just right in that spot. I happened to be there at the same, so it was really just a story of right place, right time. Yeah.
And you saw him. I looked around. You're like, Matt's over there, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's Matt. And I don't know. I think it's just like I understand celebrities and been around them enough that I kind of don't want to bother them because I know they usually hate it, to be honest. And I mean, why would you? Why wouldn't you?
I mean, that's why I said it's like I didn't want to bombard the guy immediately, but it's like I had to do something. But we can take this kind of step by step if you want. It was like we were sitting there for a while still, and he did talk to some other people. I don't know that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Like I knew the face of one of the other people that he was talking to. They've been on Critical Role as a guest, and I think they're on another like popular actual play now, but I don't know their name, and I don't know the name of the other show. But so there was some other like notable person there that I think also it seemed like random because they just seemed like they didn't seem to be, and they weren't eating together either. Matt was there with maybe like an agent or something. It seemed like because it was somebody I didn't recognize, and they did seem, I don't know. I guess I'll mention it again, but they were the one who like asked us if we wanted a photo, and I think that was kind of to be like, all right, we got to keep a schedule here. Is how I had kind of interpreted it as well.
Well, we got up to leave, and like we were all walking out, but Bob, give him full credit, is like, no, I'm going to go talk to Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, all right, I'm going to before we leave the restaurant and go to the con, like I want to stop at the bathroom. I literally have to walk right by him on the way over there. But we were leaving. He was already done with breakfast because that was the thing. I also didn't want to he's like walk up to him while he's like eating or something. I have some modicum of courtesy here where I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to make this as easy as possible for him. And yeah, just had to like go over there, say hi, and then yeah, lo and behold, he was I introduced myself as Bob, and then he almost like practically cut me off and was like, the world builder, and that blew my mind that he like recognized my channel. And I've talked about Critical Role a number of times, and like Daggerheart more recently, and Candela Obscura more recently and stuff. So maybe he saw one of those. I don't really know. We didn't talk about I didn't ask like what's your favorite video or anything. But I was curious like how he stumbled upon me before. But yeah.
Yeah, he knew, and then we walked over because we're like, all right, Bob's gonna bother him. We're gonna bother him.
I broke
too.
the ice.
Yeah, and then he knew who we were. I mean, he knew where Professor was. He knew how I was, and I was like, yeah. And then Professor asked him, why he moved from a D20 system, and went to D12. But then I said to him, which was funny because we just mentioned in last week's show, it's like, oh, why'd you switch from Pathfinder to 5e? And I think he was basically saying because, A, he was more popular, and B, I think it was just easier to use. It was sort of, I think he didn't have
the answer that everyone has always said that it's easier to run for streaming.
Yeah, for streaming.
When you're doing an actual play.
Right.
I mean, and especially then, I don't know, I feel like today there's more VTT, support for running it. Because even on Critical Role today, I'm pretty sure they just use D&D Beyond on tablets while they're playing.
They do.
So yeah, I feel like back in 2016 for Pathfinder, let alone D&D, I don't know if anything like that existed, that they could have even had the support, Well, it would have had to be referencing books is what I'm thinking.
But D&D Beyond is a separate company. It's nothing to do with WoTC. They were one of the first advertisers for Critical Role, and they advertised heavily on there. So they, right place, right time. But I was asking because I was like, I saw those videos of you, with like Felicia Day and just hanging out talking about Pathfinder because that was their original game. And they switched, and I remember I even said that. I was like, boy, I wonder what the alternate universe is like where you were playing Pathfinder, and he laughed. And I wish I recorded that because I don't even remember. And
hey, I was thinking the same thing about how I wish I was focusing more on the actual conversation. It was still just kind of the shock of wow, we're talking to Matt Mercer. And that's mostly what was going through my head.
Well, what was going through my head was we're talking to Matt Mercer, and he is so nice. And he's so charismatic, and he was so into talking to us and was present and was there and was just as excited to talk to us as we were talking to him, that I might have a little bit of a man crush now. I was like, damn, this guy is as cool as everyone says
How
he
could
is.
you not, man? Yeah. He's professionally charismatic. Yeah.
Yeah, he was really cool. I was like, damn it, this guy's as cool as everybody. Everyone says he's cool talent. He was, and he rizzed us over. We were blown away by his charisma, and don't remember anything about the conversation other than it was a nice conversation, and we were all very happy afterwards. And then,
it's definitely an interesting feeling at a convention when you're a small celebrity and there's other larger celebrities that are there. Linda and I were in a green room at a convention in Halifax that brought us in, and they had much bigger guests that were also there. So it was we're in here, but there's also Anthony Stewart Head, Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and LeVar Burton, and other people who were just here. And so wow. Your first time of having something like that where you're just included in a group that includes a much bigger celebrity that you look up to or that you've seen their things a lot, it's just a very wild experience.
Someone says,
and that's how it felt at the summit and on Thursday night as well, because there was Jeremy Crawford's there, and I know he's been a million places now, but until the summit, I had only ever seen him, on the other side of a screen, and Todd Kenrick was there, and well, and actually on Thursday night then is where I very briefly met Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall, who are the lead designers for some of Darrington Press's games. So yeah,
I mean,
I've only ever seen them like on YouTube before. So yeah, it was really cool.
I don't know if he has a 20 for charisma, but he has at least an 18. I'll give him an 18 for charisma. Because I've actually, I know Jonathan Groff pretty well. He has a 20 for charisma. He actually even blows away Matt Mercer. Jonathan Groff is like ridiculous. He gives you a big hug and he's like super nice. But we didn't get the hug. Everyone asked us if we got the Matt Mercer hug, but we didn't do it.
Oh,
In the picture, you sort of see
We got our arms
a
around
slight
him.
thing with an arm around
I had my arm
Professor
around him.
Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
yeah. Professor Dungeon Master basically got a hug.
Yeah, he got the hug,
Yeah.
but I did. I was around and touching him. I was touching him. I never
Wow,
watched
what a
his
weird
hand
thing to say,
again.
Steve.
Never watched it.
I am like second degree embarrassed by your statements.
Oh, hey, look, there's not a lot of nerd celebrities out there, so I'll take what I can
It's
get.
true. We gotta savor it.
Yeah, I gotta savor it. But because he was so nice, and he knew us.
He was super nice.
He knew who we were. That was even the crazier part.
Yeah, I mean,
he was
and
like calling us
well, yeah,
out.
I
I'm
was
like,
thinking
damn.
back to that too. Oh yeah, because another thing, of course, that I think Professor brought it up, but again, loose memory, was that like he made a joke about using Matt's face on like a bunch of thumbnails,
He did.
and he was like, "Yeah, how do you feel about the laser eyes like that he's used on?"
He did. He mentioned that how he was using his thumbnail.
What did Matt say to that? Because a lot of people just use him.
Of course, I mean, he pretty much just said like. Again, kind of like the answer that we all know is like, well, people do what they do to get clicks, and he was nice as you can be about it, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, like some people use him in even more negative context. I think Professor DM like will do it, but it's purely like for the face recognition and like to make it kind of funny. I don't.
That's not like Bob and I would ever use that for our own streams. Of course not.
Just don't look
so
at
it's not like I put him on the
from
thumbnail.
this stream. Just don't.
Don't look
do
at
it.
either of
Just
our
stay here,
thumbnails for
don't
both
look
of
at
our
the thumbnail.
streams today. We'll use the same picture. So that was an interesting way to start off the convention. It's like so Bob hasn't even stepped on the convention floor yet, and already he's been to a D&D party with every single YouTuber insider, and then hung out with us, which really is the highlight of his convention, and Matt Mercer, and then he actually starts on the con. And then we walked over, and you saw. So what did you think of the floor? So we brought him onto the floor, and the floor is like for your size comparison, Mark, maybe an eighth of a Gen Con floor, maybe even a tenth. I mean, it was big, but it was very spread out. There's a lot of room, but it's not even close to Gen Con. We were able to you could do the whole thing in an hour or two. You can walk on the entire floor. I've done Gen Con, and after 3 days, I'll still not see everything because that's how big the floor is. Yeah, it's too big. So it's much smaller. But what did you think, Bob?
No, I was still pretty blown away by it but I said Grace and I did like step into the expo hall on Thursday night when we got our badges, or like Thursday afternoon, I guess, when we got our badges. And yeah, seeing it for the first time, I was very blown away because it was probably double or triple the size of the still warehouse size halls that like the previous con I was at, the size of that con. So that like it could have fit basically, yeah, PAX could have fit 2 or 3 of those inside of that one room. It felt like anyway. And so just seeing like looking down the kind of the main thoroughfare at how huge this space is was pretty crazy. And then and Friday morning, then after we finally got through like the lines and stuff, which I guess moved pretty quick. It wasn't that bad really. We only explored, I think, 2 like rows of the hall before then like Grace and I and Stephen the animal, another friend who was there, another Stephen, went to go try to get into Matt's talk. But yeah, should I move on to that? Or
go on to your talk.
So I mean, it's a short story. We were like, okay, we saw a long line of people at like the tickets and like near the will call. So originally I thought those people were for will call, but then I was like, oh wow, there's already people lining up for Matt's talk. That was at like 10:30 a.m. when we knew his talk is at 12. So we were like, okay, those were like the real diehards. Like they were gonna do that anyway. No big deal. So we show up at 11:30, a half an hour early for this presentation. And literally, like as soon as we walk back out into this main room, there's a person with the like air traffic control, basically like sticks in their hands, like the line for Grand Ballroom A is closed. We're like it's capped. We're not accepting anybody else into the line. And we were just like, are you kidding me? Like so I don't know if the timing, like if they just announced that for the first time, but regardless, we weren't even able to get into this a half hour early. So we did then like walk up to like where the ballroom's doors actually were, and like there was another guy there just saying like, hey, yep, like there's room in this other presentation, but we just cut off A. And the guy even said, now this is like a PAX enforcer or whatever they call them, was like, now I do recognize you, but I can't let you in there. I was like, okay, dang it.
So then, what did you do?
I thought I was going to be able to, squeeze out some more luck out of that. But
if you had me with you, I would have snuck in. Yeah. Now, anyhow,
There you
but
go.
it's not as good. It didn't matter. You still got to see it.
yeah, we still watched a good chunk of it on Twitch, and then that was on my friend Steven's phone. And then at some point, I checked, like, opened my phone, like for the first time that day, basically, because it just like felt like we're running around so much. And yeah, and I had a private message on Twitter from Spencer Stark, designer behind Candela Obscura and behind Daggerheart, who was like, "Hey, we're running a playtest today, and like Ginny's going to be there and some other people. You should come if you're available." And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. And at this point, it was only like it was maybe 35, 40 minutes away. Like I saw his message probably like an hour after he had sent it. So we were like, okay, we gotta like we gotta move. And we went over to this was also at the same place we got breakfast. So I assume that's just where they were all staying in one of the meeting rooms there. And so we also like skipped lunch basically because we were lining up for his talk at 11:30 and then went right to this thing which was technically starting at 1. So yeah, and then we were there for a long time. So I didn't actually eat until like, besides breakfast, didn't actually eat until like 3:30 again then that day because we took a break in the session to like get some food. But yeah, so I mean to go over that very briefly, it's like we get into this meeting room. There's Spencer Stark, Rowan Hall. I think Ginny and her partner and or husband was already there. And or no, what am I saying? When we first arrived, we were just like out in the hallway, and that's when we ran into Antonio D'Amico, Pointy Hat, once again, who was just like standing outside the room because the door was closed. And we were like, "Oh, hey, you're here for this too?" And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't want to like go in yet. It looks like it's still locked or something." And I was like, "Well, like it's like 5 minutes of like I'm just gonna peek in there." And I open it up, and that's when we saw the designers, saw Ginny, and they did have like a camera guy there because this was all like recorded. I guess they didn't have us like mic'd up or anything. There was just a guy going around with a camera. So I think they were basically just capturing some like B-roll. They said like for, well, yeah, kind of, I don't know what they're going to use it for, I guess, but they will be using my likeness for something, I guess, because they did make us sign a thing for that, but we did not have to sign an NDA or anything about the game.
So tell us a little bit about Daggerheart. What was the adventure?
What's it like? What
and what
changed
did you play?
since
like,
Gen Con? What did you do?
Well, you said you spent a lot of time building your character, like way too much.
Right. I wish I kept better track of the actual timing. I guess we probably didn't even start really getting into anything until like 1:30 anyway. But then that time, like the next hour and a half, was basically going over some rules and then making our own characters. Like I very much figured this was going to be like, here's a pre-gen, okay, you're in the woods, and then blah blah blah. Like I thought we were just gonna kind of walk right into a game, but it was very much, like a little bit of a walkthrough of the rules, which was kind of the stuff that you guys already know. It was just like kind of the core rule of like 2d12, roll high. You're adding one of your 6 stats, which are similar to the D&D stats. I have my sheet over here, but do have like different names for the most part. I think they probably explained health at that point, which is in like thresholds. Basically, it's like enemies deal a certain amount of damage, and then depending on where that damage falls between these different thresholds you have, then you only take either 1, 2, or 3 hit points at a time. But our first level characters only had 6 hit points to start, so you can only really take a couple hits. But it's cool
So that's
because
still the same from before with the thresholds, where your thresholds were set by things like armor and other things that made you tougher.
yeah, and so in this case, I think the thresholds were set purely by the class, because like the character sheet that I have here is for just my class. And it says right like on it in type, what my minor, major, and severe thresholds are. Armor, which may have changed since the original, because I didn't remember how it was, at least in the original.
I may have also forgotten what set the thresholds from when I was reading about the original.
Sure. I mean, the thresholds I'm pretty sure were part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The armor I think might be new, but it basically is because, okay, those enemies are automatically dealing damage. Like they do not roll to hit.
Right.
So what you can do as a player is roll a die for your armor. And so different armor types, I believe, have different armor types have a different die, and you can roll that to subtract incoming damage. And that way it might fall in, a lower threshold, basically.
So
but then
that's
as
what
you do
it was.
that,
That's how it connected to the thresholds. I knew it was somehow related to the threshold, but it's a random addition to your threshold, essentially, by subtracting the damage.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's like when you get hit, if like I only had a D4 armor die. So if I was only like 2 points above one of my thresholds, I know it's like probably better to roll for it. But otherwise it's like, nah, I'll just take it, because you also have a limited number of times that you can, cash in that like armor as a resource, basically, to roll that.
And then it breaks, and you have to repair it, or
they didn't go over that because they said you pretty much repair it during like downtime, like rest, basically.
So it's kind of a per rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have the rules. Okay, actually, I can see during a short rest, repair armor. Describe how you spend time quickly repairing your armor and clear 2 used armor slots. And for reference, as a warrior anyway, I had 6 armor slots to start. So that's like during a short rest, you could heal 2. And during a long rest, I think you can heal all of them. So that was one thing that was new. And I think the main thing that was new, although again, I don't remember 100% how this worked in the original version, but a lot of people were interested in this when I talked about it in my video today, was the initiative order, like for lack of a better general term for this, where instead of rolling initiative, which I'd love to actually hear, we can maybe talk about it right after I sum it up, how you guys do initiative. Because like at my table, I've like totally stopped rolling initiative. I feel like it is kind of a pause in combat right before you get into stuff. But anyway, instead of rolling initiative and like getting an order that you have to arrange, and instead of just going around the table, which is like what a lot of lighter games at least do these days, I feel like, and it's pretty much how I run it at my table. This worked by action tokens. So there was no set order to like what players go when. Like anyone, like if you have an idea, it's like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to use this thing to do blah, blah, blah. Nice. But then when you do that, you put one of these little like tokens in front of the GM. Like he just had this little card. Spencer just had this little action tracker card in front of him. So you put that on the card, and then so players can continue to go like that. But the way the GM gets their turn essentially is like when a player rolls their action with fear, meaning out of their 2d12, their fear die was just higher than their hope die. That's all it means. Like they could have still succeeded or whatever. So it's like basically a 50-50 shot of that rolling with fear. Or if they roll and fail, whatever they were trying to do, then the GM can go after that player. And when the GM goes, they kind of build their turn by cashing in a number of those action tokens that were put on the tracker. So if like 5 players, like if every player went before the GM decided to go, because they also don't have to go, I guess, during those moments. And I already see someone saying it's crunchy. It was so smooth. Like it's maybe just hard for me to explain because like I'm not looking at the rules or whatever. But it was so smooth, like because every player could just go whenever they wanted, and then the GM knew when they had to go. That's really all you need to know. And they
So
just
that
go
means
by,
that
like,
if you succeed and roll hope higher for the whole round, everybody does, that the GM cannot go that round. Is that right? Or do they get a mercy where they get to go at the end of the turn automatically?
as I understand,
Nothing
as
happened.
I understand it, because again, he didn't like tell us all the rules of this, but it really almost seemed like there wasn't like a defined round, because I'm sure
when do you
there
get
must
back
be for certain effects.
When do you get back the token?
When do you get back I guess it was just after he spends them, after the GM in this, he spends or was
But
spending.
you can't possibly get into a. So therefore, there must be some kind of mercy rule where the GM eventually can spend them when they have all of them, because otherwise you can get into a deadlock where nobody has a token and the GM is not allowed to cash them in.
Oh, well,
because
there was
everybody
I guess
rolled hope.
there was no like limit on the number of tokens as far as I understood, because it was literally just like,
Oh, you
here,
just have an unlimited number of tokens. So
yeah, like the players, like he just like there was some number where he was just like, yeah, have at least like 7 of these or something. But remember, there's literally a greater than 50-50 shot of the GM getting a turn every time a player goes.
because
So it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that the GM is going to be stuck and not be able to go after, every player gets a chance.
No, that's interesting. Not in terms of whether the GM can go or not, but the fact that every player has an unlimited number of them, essentially, because that is going to lead to, I think, some social contract concerns where you have one player who's super excited about what their character can do, and it's just like, all right, I'm going to do this. All right, now I'm going to do that. Okay, now I'm going to do this. And they just try to take all of their turns an unlimited number of times. And other people are like, wait, hold on, I want to take my turns. Like, no, I could just keep taking my turns. And so, like, you would have to, like, talk it out ahead of time, because there's no built-in mechanic to stop someone who is trying to take turns over and over again, it sounds like. I
agree that is what it sounds like. I assume there is something, and that's why I even mentioned in my video, like, none of us were like trying to go multiple times in a row or trying to like 2 people, like we didn't even have it where like 2 people tried to go at the same time, and then there, no like bickering back and forth about, but I want to do this thing first. Like nothing like that happened. I'm sure that could happen if there's no mechanic for it, but yeah, it didn't happen to us. So that was fine. And yeah, everybody, like, and even like, my wife Grace and my friend Stephen were there. Like they didn't get to play in this game, unfortunately. There was like already 5 or 6 players or something. But they were there watching, and like everybody thought that was a pretty interesting mechanic. And apparently, so here's the other thing. Apparently this is already how a Conan RPG does it. I don't know for sure, but I talked to somebody else about it later in the day, and they said that, yeah, like this isn't 100% a new thing. And I did see a question about like, can the GM like only go for like one character or something? And it's like, no, they were able to spend like a bunch of these things, so like multiple NPCs could go, or they could spend like a bunch of things on one guy so he could do something really cool. So it was just very much just like a resource that the GM had at their disposal. And then there was another mechanic, not explained at all, so I didn't even mention it in my video, but where the GM could take a couple of those action tokens and like trade them for, I want to say it was called like a fear something that must have just been a lot more powerful, basically.
Cool.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And actually that could have been like an automatic, like, okay, I just get to go now. move that the GM has.
Oh, so that could be the mercy rule where
Yeah.
it's just statistically unlikely, but the players rolled like 8 times and they always succeeded and they never rolled fear. And the GM's like, okay, I've got 8 of these. I'm going to trade in 2 to go with the other 6 because otherwise you guys are probably going to end this fight and everything's going to be dead and I'll have done nothing. And this only happens like once every like...
Yeah,
1,000
but it could happen.
Once every 1,000 encounters, but it happened this time, so I'm going to do it. So that's just a smart design to put in some kind of a release valve just to weird luck.
And I just saw somebody comment, it sounds like a Doom Point variant, and I think that's what it was called in this Conan RPG that Runehammer was telling me about.
What was the story? Was there an actual story?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great question. So yeah, we got getting hung up on mechanics. So I built this character who was a fawn, which is supposed to be like a deer person, but I fashioned him more like a goat because I had this idea of him having this like mountainous background. Because basically, right off the bat, you choose your ancestry, essentially your race, and you choose your community, which is kind of like a region, but it's basically like your background. And so mine was a ridge-born fawn. So I was basically this like mountainous guy. And one of my questions, because this was part of character creation, is that on your character sheet for your class, there's a bunch of questions that it asks like you specifically to, basically just improv an answer, but like you make up whatever you want. And one of my goals here was like, what legendary place have you always wanted to visit and why is it so special? And I wrote down that I've always wanted to climb like the highest mountain in the world. And like we made up a name, whatever. And another question was, somebody defeated you in battle years ago and left you to die. Who was it? And, why was it such a betrayal? And so I wrote down that I was once like acting as a guide for a group of adventurers and they like left me to die somewhere. So based on those 2 things and a couple other questions from other players, while we took our break for lunch at 3:30 or whatever, Spencer took like 15 minutes and basically built this adventure where we were like heading through the woods, like back to some town. And I don't remember the names of these locations because they were just kind of out of nowhere. But and we were attacked on the way. So we did get right into the first combat, but it was just by like some basically random like wild gnomes that were trying to steal our stuff. So we fought them. That was our exposure to combat, which all, like I said, felt pretty smooth. And then we got into this town and found that this NPC who was near and dear to one of the other players in this group, their home was broken into. So we were investigating in here and then basically found traces that were relevant, like a clue that like, oh my gosh, this was like perpetrated by the party that betrayed my character. And so we were able to like track them down and like it led to us climbing up this mountain, which was like, again, like one of my character's goals and like other people's goals also came into this. But then we learned that there was also a connection to some monster that was, I can't remember who that was tied to, but there was basically like a monster and this evil party had like captured this one NPC, brought them up this mountain, and were basically doing some kind of ritual. And then that's like kind of when we literally got up there and like saw the scene, like that was actually the end of the adventure. We had to like cut it off on this literal cliffhanger because it was already like 5 o'clock or something at that
literal
point.
Cliffhanger on a literal cliff.
Sounds pretty cool. Like the mechanics sound pretty interesting. I know you said you wanted to talk about overall initiative systems. Let me tell you, Stephen rolls for combat.
Done. I do. I roll for combat.
Does.
I do. I roll for combat.
Yeah. So do you do like a side based initiative? Are you doing like every character rolls
I'm on a VTT,
initiative?
So I press a button and it does everything.
There you go.
It's also heavily scripted, so I press a button, it's all done. I'm
always interested in different initiative systems for sure. and interlaced ones like the one you described are cool. The worst initiative system possible is a batch initiative where everybody goes on one side and then everybody goes on the other side.
No tactics.
Yeah,
that destroys
or
tactics.
the side initiative, as you said, Bob, with the batch initiative.
Terrible.
The problem with those is that you can just have some big issues, especially if there's a lot of units on one side.
That's how you do a TPK.
Yes. There have been numerous examples of TPKs, even against a pretty easy encounter, where in some editions of D&D or Pathfinder, where it's just like, yeah, this vampire stat block has a fireball, and there's 12 of them in here. And we did batch initiative, and vampires won. They did 12 fireballs. No one had evasion. And so they were easy vampires. Everyone made all of their saving throws. They succeeded on most of the 12. And they died anyway because they took 12 times half damage, and that was enough to kill the entire party or whatever. So, you can have some big issues if you do batch initiative. But there's some cool ones. Like the one you described is cool. Another one that's kind of cool, Shadow of the Demon Lord does an initiative where the monster generally goes first if you want to take all of your actions. But you can take fewer actions in order to go first. And everyone who takes fewer actions goes first that round. And you can choose to go last in one round and then first in the next round, which will let you go twice in a row, essentially. And then among the PCs, they can go in whatever order they want. And so that's a kind of cool strategic system where you go when you want to go, but at a cost.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the key to some of this is when you have an initiative order, like that's just set for the entire combat, then you do sometimes still end up in this thing where, okay, I just went and now I know I'm not going to get to go for like 10 or 15 more minutes, depending on, how long people take with their turns. So people can kind of like tune out. But with this sort of combat, which was essentially, I see people saying like a popcorn initiative, rather than like the GM just like randomly calling on people or something. It was just, players wanting to stay focused and like looking for the moment when like, okay, I can do like my thing here. And I guess the other players just, being gracious to give them the space and like, just kind of waiting your turn, even though there's not a specific order. So
for what it's worth,
it kept everybody engaged.
When I used to run tournament Dungeons and Dragons for Goodman Games and DCC, the people who used to make it to the final rounds were the ones that on their very first turn, they would reorder themselves in the initiative they wanted to. They would actually not even go. And these are like, again, this is tournament D&D, which is a whole different thing. But they were always the best ones. So they'd be like, okay, let's reorder. And they didn't matter what they rolled. They would just reorder themselves exactly in the order they want. And then they would start the combat. And it seems like I always thought about that because it really worked, especially at that level where it was like life and death every encounter and just getting harder and harder. And then they used to do all this battlefield control too. It's like they would reorder battlefield control. First thing they do was like, a fog of war or, everything they can to mess up the monsters so they had time to get ready. And then they would have the frontline fighters go to the front and the wizards go in the back. And it worked great until because it's still tournament D&D. Is that they were in a dungeon, a big one, and they were up fighting some creature. I forgot what it was. And then they did a wall of fire to separate the spellcasters from the melee so they were safe. But then a boulette came from under the ground right below spellcasters, and they were like, no! And I'm like, you thought you were sneaky, but I was sneakier. And I went to hell in a handbasket very quickly. That became a mess. And that's what makes games so much fun.
It really does. Yeah. I feel like it's, sometimes if you have that really tightly built strategy, then sometimes it's fragile, and you were able to upset it with that new tactic that you didn't expect.
I remember there's a monk who had to run back to save the casters because they were like, oh crap. It was like the boulette. They did not expect that. No one expects the boulette. And the best initiative or most interesting one I ever saw, which was It's Dungeon Twister. So Dungeon Twister, the way it works is, and that's a board game, is that you get cards, and the cards are like, it's like say 1 through 4, and that's the order you're gonna go. And everyone puts down the card, but once you use a card, you can't reuse it. So, and when you use all 4 cards, you get a new set. So you got to be really tricky, because it's like, oh, do you want to go early or do you want to go late? Because once you use it, you can't reuse it, and then you're stuck. And there's a lot of tactics with that. And now you're against other players. It's kind of a strategic.
Gloomhaven has something like that too, although it's cooperative, where the cards have initiative values
1
on
to
them
100, you're right,
that determine where you're going to go in the initiative order.
Right.
And those could be interesting. Another fun one that some people talked about in chat that's in several RPGs is basically the exact opposite of batch initiative, where anybody on side A can go, and then somebody on side B goes, and you go back and forth until one of the sides runs out. And then the side that still has actions keeps going, and some bosses get multiple turns because they're just worth more than one person. That's in like Lancer, that's in Fabula Ultima, that's in a few. And that can be fun. And I thought when Bob started talking about it that it was going to be something similar to that, but then it sort of is, but it banks it up and then cashes it out at certain times rather than spending it 1 for 1 right away, which allows for so many interesting ways to combine into a mega turn that I find that fascinating. And probably, obviously I haven't seen the details, but I can tell that's a good game design mechanic in terms of like the depth that you can give to the GM with hoarding and cashing out.
Yeah, like Spencer told us that the enemies we were fighting didn't have anything huge that they could do. Like, because at one point he did have a ton of these tokens. They didn't have anything huge because they were just these little gnome guys. But he said, like, yeah, we're like working on some exciting things for monsters where like the players will then be, anxious about going because they know they're feeding into what the GM can do with certain monsters. So I think it definitely is this like cool give and take between the players and the GM, because they're essentially making the GM more powerful every time they go, depending on how, like, if the GM is saving those things up anyway. Right. But, then the GM also has to weigh, like, do I have time to like save up these moves, or should I go when I get the chance? Because, I don't want them to just kill the monster before I get to do the cool thing or whatever. So there's kind of more strategy involved with it.
So people have been asking,
definitely, maybe just because it was new, but it definitely kept us engaged. Yeah.
So people are asking what the game this is. So this was Daggerheart, and it's playtesting pretty soon. I know they're going to be doing public playtesting,
right?
And it's coming out next year.
It's the Critical Role second game that they made, Candela Obscura, which is kind of more of the like horror based game, and then Daggerheart is the more
investigative horror.
Yeah, investigative horror. This is more of like the typical fantasy adventuring game the one that's more similar to Dungeons and Dragons, you would say. And so people have been very interested in it. There was some early playtests at Gen Con, and then Bob got to sit down with like some of the main creators of the game and play in a game with Jenny D and others at the con. And so that's why we've been going through it, seeing what changed, what stayed the same, what details we now know that weren't like fully revealed back then.
So I just remembered another thing. This is kind of small, but it's like an organizational thing, I guess. Was the original character sheet design was like this like landscape sheet with spaces on it, so you could place these cards, because that's like another way that they're having this information. So instead of having to like take the notes, you would just like lay the card on your sheet. But they said they did run into problems with that, with people not liking like moving the cards around by accident or like whatever. I guess it just was like a little bit cumbersome. So they ended up switching it to, at least currently, because this is all still subject to change, but currently it is just a regular like vertical sheet. I don't know how you can see that.
Bob, that was what I was going to ask you next, because when you were on the show before, we talked about that and how like if you jostled the sheet that the cards might move off and other things like that. And I was saying that it was just a really cool idea, but I was worried that in practice it would wind up being cumbersome. And I wasn't sure. I was like, they'd have to play test it. And so I was going to ask because I wanted to know. And now you got it for me ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's cool. I would have liked to try it that way myself. because we still all were using cards. Like everybody still had cards kind of right next to their sheet.
Right.
But you just got to you just put them wherever you wanted, I guess. Or that way, maybe it's like easier to okay, I want to show the GM hey, here's this thing on my sheet. What does that do? Like you literally can't do that if you got 5 cards laid out on your sheet somewhere. So
and when you take the sheet home and the GM owns the cards, you don't actually have those abilities, and you may not be able to look at it when you're referencing your character at home. And there's other reasons why I thought for usability it might not work, even though it was cool and a cool idea. So I'm not super surprised by that, but I wasn't sure either, and I wanted to see what they found out in the playtest.
Yeah, and I know, and another thing was I don't know if off the top of my head if the other players did this, but for me, just learning things in general, taking notes is super important. So even though I had the cards right there, I was writing everything in my own shorthand onto my sheet, just as a really quick little notes. So, and if I had the card right on there, then I'd probably be pausing and reading the whole card each time, where it was easier for me to refer to my own note on the sheet instead of referring to the actual card generally. So
that makes sense.
That did help for my case as well.
So we're still on Friday, by the way. We're not even on Friday afternoon, so we got a way to go.
Well, no, we made it to 5 p.m. for Bob on Friday,
still a lot more
because it was a 1 to 5 game.
Yeah, you didn't even tell me what I did because that was Bob. I had my afternoon. I'll go. Mine's much faster. I saw the D&D talk, which you can see, and I talked about it earlier. It's basically they announced their new books, and the talk was 10 minutes of them talking about their new releases and 50 minutes of them talking about historical adventures. And it was very much hey, we need to stretch a 10-minute presentation into an hour. I will say, and you can watch this, it was a little sad because they would be, I feel bad for them, but I think it was their own fault because they were stretching on so long, is they would be and here's the new book. And there'd be crickets. It was like no one clapped, no one was ooh, ah. It was just crickets. And then they even said it during the presentations, come on, people, don't you have phones? No, they didn't say that, but you know what I mean. They're aren't you excited? And everyone's oh yeah. And it was a little please clap after a while, which I felt kind of bad, but I think they kind of went a little way too long on the let's talk on the history. So by the time they got to the real meaty part of the presentation, everyone was sort of but I did see them. I
feel that it's just a little bit of you said, they kind of the order they did things in, but then maybe not enough build up to okay. And we're about to reveal the cover. You know what I mean? They didn't hype it up then in the moment.
Yeah, and you can watch it. You can watch it on Twitch, I believe, and
I haven't caught up on that.
Yeah,
yet.
it's very much and look, hold for applause. There is no applause. Okay, and they started to get a little antsy by the second or third time that happened, which is interesting in its own right. We'd probably talk about that for half an hour if we wanted to, but we won't. And then I was exhausted and I was wet because I walked back to my hotel room and it was raining and I was soaking wet. And then a friend of mine, Adam Smith from Order of the Amber Dies, he's oh, you want to go out to dinner? We're going to go meet some people at a brewery. I'll pick you up because he lives right there. I was sure. And give me some time to unwind and dry off because I was soaking wet. And he's okay, I'll be there at 6 and pick you up. 7 o'clock comes, he finally shows up. I think it was 7:20 by the time he showed up because the traffic was so bad because it was pouring rain and it was dark and it was Friday and cold. And then we're trying to find this place and we finally find it. And it's probably 8 o'clock. And I walk into this brewery and Bob is there. I was what? What's Bob? Come on, really? At this table of the people we were going to hang out with was Bob and Grace and Stephen. I was what the heck? What
Can't get away from me.
I know. That was
no
come on.
Escape.
That was really weird. Even for me, that was kind of weird. I was okay, why are you here? Why were you there, by the way?
Well, yeah, because I tried to explain this.
Well,
Well, or
I know
maybe you
why
remember,
you
and
were
this is
there.
for
Why
the
don't you
people,
tell
right?
the other people?
So I was there because I had, prior to this weekend, uh, spent a weekend earlier this year with Professor DM and Runehammer, aka Hankerin Furnail, and a couple other people. And Grace was there as well. Like that was a great time. That was like kind of right around the time of the summit, really.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, like we've been just like chatting back and forth, like on Discord here and there. So of course, like we were all planning on meeting up with Professor because he was also going to PAX. But yeah, Brandon Hank, aka Hanker Infernal, whatever, didn't really like want to join in on the con scene too much, even though he's like living in Philly these days. And but nonetheless, he threw this get together like largely for his Patreon community, and invited us to just hang out at some point. Like I think they got to that bar at like 3 in the afternoon, and we left at maybe like 10. So he was there like all day practically. Um, and yeah, so we were there to see Brandon, and we knew Professor was there earlier, so we didn't expect him to come back, and we had no idea that like you would be showing up, with this other guy, because I didn't know Adam prior to this at all either. So it's
Yeah.
just like the mutual connections, of this network, like somehow linked back up.
Yeah, because it turned out Professor was there, and I went to the D&D talk, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna meet up Runehammer," and then
Yeah.
he did, and then he left, and he went out to dinner, and then you showed up, and then I texted. Professor was texting me. He's like, "Oh, what are you up to?" I was like, I didn't know he was there. I was like, "Oh, we're at this bar in this place." He's like, "Yeah, I know where it is." I was just there. I was like, "What?" And then he shows up, and then I'm like, "All right, what's going on? This is like weird." So like, yeah, it was like Runehammer was there, Adam was there, I was there, you were there, Professor was there.
Yep. The only person not there was Matt Mercer.
That was pretty much it. And I know, I think he was probably pretty busy though. But so yeah, so that was Friday night, and then we left, and then I was exhausted, and then there was Saturday. And what did you do Saturday morning?
Saturday, yeah. So Saturday morning, I basically slept as late as I could, which still wasn't that late.
Mhm.
And then I prepared questions from my community and from another creator's community, another creator who's more focused on Critical Role and stuff,
Mhm.
because I was going to interview Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall about Candela Obscura. That was the only thing like planned ahead of time, by the way, like revolving around like Darrington Press or anything. Like I didn't know they were going to be at the thing on Thursday night. When I saw them briefly, I had no idea I was going to get invited to play Daggerheart Friday. The only thing, like, that was one of the only things I had planned was this interview Saturday morning at 10 a.m. So yeah, it was kind of then like hastily like putting together like this list of questions. And yeah, fortunately, another creator, Luna, aka Lou Boffin on YouTube, she runs a channel like largely about like Critical Role recaps. And so I knew her audience was going to be like really into following stuff about Candela Obscura as well. So I said like, hey, if your people have any questions, I'm happy to ask. So yeah, thankfully she was able to help me out with that, like getting some good questions for them. And so yeah, so then I went back to that same place where I did the playtest and talked to them for a while. We actually only planned for like 30 minutes, but I guess it just kind of like went on. I think we ended up talking for closer to an hour. And then so it was like almost 11. And at that point, I'm like getting text from Grace like, hey, like we're going to this, Ginny D and Dungeon Dudes panel at 11:30. Like there's already a line. You got to get over here. So I was like, okay, crap. So, and by the way, I wasn't like answering these texts during the interview. That was already over. But then I see these texts. I see these texts. I like let her know I'm coming, say bye to everybody, and really tried to nail the idea that like, hey, Darrington Press people, if you keep asking me to do stuff, I'm gonna keep saying yes. So keep inviting me to things. and then raced over to back to the convention center, which was fortunately very close, but like got up to the ballroom, got in line, which was really long for this presentation from Ginny and the Dungeon Dudes, and that was really cool because when I was standing in line, like right away, somebody who was in line was just like, "Oh, hey, you're Bob World Builder," and I was like, "Yeah." And then we just talked about D&D for a while, and then I realized like, oh yeah, this is a group of people who all watch D&D/RPG YouTube on a regular basis. Like more people here might know who I am, and then a couple other people said hi, and eventually they let us in there, and that was actually a really great presentation because it was just all about like making RPG content online and kind of like how to get started, how what it's like to progress from having a small following to like trying to build it up to do it full time, and what it's like to make that jump. So it was really cool to hear like their stories about it, and just their perspective on the whole thing, because it is still like very different. Like when everybody does this, I feel like everybody kind of does it a different way. So yeah, it was interesting. Like Ginny, for example, said how she started as a cosplay creator, and I didn't even really know that because I guess I didn't follow her then. I didn't know who she was until she started talking about D&D however many years ago. So yeah, it's like, so she already kind of had a following and transitioned into it. The Dungeon Dudes like are interesting because Monty was like getting his PhD like during their kind of like rise into doing it full time, and they said how basically like the one of them, Kelly, like kind of was full time before the other Dungeon Dude, Monty. So like that was really interesting to hear. Yeah, I don't know. That was another great talk. And I don't know, what did you do Saturday morning then, Stephen? Yeah. I keep rambling on.
I had some meetings, and actually I got up, same thing as you, I got up nice and early, and I'm going to the convention, and I'm about to go in, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I need to cancel the meeting." I'm like, "Come on, man, don't cancel." I'm like, "I'm here, and I got up early. I could have slept an extra hour or two." But then it wasn't that bad. Then he just delayed it half an hour, so then I wasn't so bad. So I went to the market, got some breakfast, and then I walked in. I had my meetings, and then I mostly just walked around and just talked to, there's a lot of people I know at the booths, so I was talking to a lot of people at booths that I know and just hanging out, networking. And then eventually I met up with a professor, and we got lunch, because that was the day that we all played MacDeath together.
Yeah.
And that is Professor Dungeon Master's Deathbringer, his custom module that he's run, I guess, 1,000,000 times, where it's Macbeth but retold as MacDeath. And I totally forgot everything about that play, even though I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. It's like the one I don't seem to remember. And I basically was just, it was like my relaxing day, kind of. Relaxing it, I seem to be doing nothing but having meetings, so, and not playing. In fact, I was talking to Derek from Knights of Last Call, and he's like, "Don't forget to play games. Stop having meetings." And I'm like, "Yes, but this is the great game. This is all the networking and talking to people, the great game itself." Was recognized a fair number of times, and a couple people even took pictures with me. So a lot more than Gen Con. So I was like, "Oh, getting up there." So that was interesting. And so so did that, had lunch, and then we played Macbeth. And Professor Dungeon Master, let's see. First of all, he is so good at voices. I was
I was shocked.
Stunned.
Like I know he does some voices in his videos sometimes, but like
amazing.
I don't know, not to that extent, or like not that many, like back to back.
And these really voices don't look like they should come out of his face because they're so different.
I agree with that as well. That was
he was really like Mel Blanc. He was like talking like a witch, and I'll be like, I was like, "Oh my god, what's going on here? Who is this guy?" Like
he was just doing like a witch impression. Hell, Macbeth.
Yes. Well, he started off. That was actually he was very good. He starts off with the boil, patrol and trouble. I forgot how it goes, but he literally
double,
right. He does the exact
burn and cauldron bubble.
Yes, precisely.
He did the exact.
And he has us all join
then
in.
He had
on the
us
chant.
do it, and we're all tapping our fingers like this.
The sound of rain.
Right,
yeah.
to make the sound of rain. So we're all tapping, and he's like going and doing this cadence, and I was like, okay,
Doing the whole recipe.
yes, he got an A+ for beginning that. I was like, okay, that is how you start a role-playing session, because he got us right into it, and I was like, damn. I'm like, that was impressive.
Yeah, I agree, because it was just like immediately, I don't know, it immediately just set the tone of like, okay, we're in a game now. Like, you know, because we were just kind of conversing pretty loosely beforehand, but like there's no competing like with that start. Like you can't ignore the fact that like, okay, like he's just asking you to recite this thing like with everybody. So you just got to get into it right away. It was really fun.
And then we went right into combat.
Yeah.
Immediately
that was my
combat.
first time
It's
playing
not
with...
like Friendbringer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say my first time playing with his patented, well, not technically patented, ultimate dungeon terrain, which was pretty interesting. Like the zones of combat in this, you know, sort of target style of these circles. I'm sure some people here like would recognize that from his videos. He's made a couple over the years about it. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I never played with it before. And you can move as far as your hand is. So we're like, every time we're moving, we're like stretching our fingers as long as possible. We're like, oh, this is how far I can move. So you could only, I'm like, but then me and Grace, we had tiny hands. I'm like, we can't move that far. Our hands are short. We're small hands. But I think it doesn't really matter, because you can't really go from area to area. So you can go anywhere, really. So
like you don't have to worry about moving very far anyway. Like all the action.
It only matters if your hand is really, really, really small.
Yeah.
If it's like a 3-year-old or something, their hand is so small they can't even move within their own area.
Well, or if you're like a professional basketball player or something, then
but then you get cut by the limit that you can't go from area to area, so you'd be okay.
Yeah. And so what was fun in the combat is that he has this roll initiative, and you just roll a 1d6. We kept tying. And when you tie initiative, you go at the same time. And so he's like, okay, you and I go 1, 2, 3, and we both roll, and you both like fight and simultaneously hit each other.
Yeah, I was just, awesome. That's making me think, like, basically what we did was he would have like the first player next to him roll it, say for the first combat, like roll 1d6 for the whole party. And he would roll, for his guys. And if for
that
he won,
round, each round was
just for that round. So then it's like if he won, he would go first for all of his guys, or if we won, then we would go in order around the table, but win it first before he goes. But if it tied, we rolled at the same time, and even on our turns, didn't he like want us to all still roll at the same time? I don't remember.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of rolling. There's a lot of rolling, and we're all doing it at the same time, and it was very chaotic, which actually was fun.
Yeah, it was a little chaotic, because then there were times where like say I'm looking, okay, like Stephen, like you just rolled your attack, okay, roll damage.
Right.
While he's rolling damage, Mark, you roll your attack.
So it was like pretty crazy,
back and forth between players, like as everyone was going.
It was extremely,
but he kept it together.
Yeah, it was very chaotic, but it felt like real combat because it was nuts, and it was a lot of fighting.
You didn't really have time to think too much. It was just kind of like, I swing my sword.
Oh yeah, and he didn't give you any time. He'd be like, okay, you're rolling 3, 2, 1, go. Like he made you go very fast. Like he did not.
Like he would kept doing that countdown as well.
Yeah, he made you go quick. You had to come up with ideas like, what are you doing? Go, go, go. Like he was really pushing you hard to go fast. And it was fine. I mean, I don't have any problems. I'm not one of those who's like, well,
I mean, we had at least 3 different combats during that one session.
Yeah, we had 3 combats, and then the fun is when you kill someone, you have a splat of a dead person. You put these splatter markers on, and then Grace and I co-killed someone. We killed someone together, so we got each a half a kill, which was fun.
Well, yeah, and then after every combat, whoever got the most kills in the combat would gain a corruption point.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't remember if we then established like what those resulted in. Like, what did the corruption do?
It had to do with the ending. And it had to do with like the end, and because you had the most corruption, and then remember the witches came to you and were going to corrupt you, and you were going to turn to them because you were playing MacDeath.
Oh yeah,
and you were going to turn into
like an
Macbeth.
epilogue.
Right, the epilogue was that you're turning into Macbeth.
I think in the normal Deathbringer, like quick 4-pager. When you reach 10 corruption, you've lost all humanity and become a monster controlled by the
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe nobody did that because it was a one shot.
No, we
only
were
got
down.
up. I had the most with 4, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Or I was tied for the most with somebody.
You were
Yeah,
still
well, you were
slightly
tied
more
for
than
4,
half human.
but the other person died, so we don't have to worry about
Oh, yeah.
that.
The person was dead.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I will say one thing about Professor, because he does say how, like, oh, when he plays, it's all open ended and there's no railroading. That was completely a railroad. It was so linear. Yeah. I mean,
it's a one shot, Stephen. You can't hold him to the same standards as a one shot.
I know.
This session was literally scripted. He had index cards that he was reading off of.
Yeah, it was scripted. Yeah. It was scripted because it was MacDeath, and we had 2 really good so the first combat was us against like orcs and goblins, I think. Then the next one was a werewolf in the castle. And we had to find a werewolf, and we killed that thing pretty damn fast.
Yeah.
And then the final confrontation was against MacBeth and the witches and Lady MacBeth with the baby. And we split the party. And it worked wonderfully because we are pros. It actually was the right move because me and Stephen... That was funny because me and Stephen went into
two Stevens.
Yeah, and we both spelled the same way. So we go into the same room to confront Lady MacBeth and get the baby. And he's like, okay, Stephen, what do you do? And we both looked at each other and we're like, which one? He's like, oh, yeah, you're both the same name. So I tackled Lady MacBeth. Stephen got the baby. He was about to kill the witches, and then we talked them. That was the longest conversation, the whole thing. We spent a good 5 minutes convincing him, dude, leave. Like, why are you attacking the witches? Just get out of there. So,
and I feel like did that really? So because then like on our side, then we were fighting MacBeth, who was like corrupted at this point. I forget what he called him. It was like Dark Lord, basically. But it was MacBeth. And a couple of these orcs that we were like cutting through to get to him, but the game basically ended when I killed
when Bob.
So what like did he really say what happened to the witches? Did they just like disappear?
They disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah. So
were
when
your characters named characters from Macbeth?
Yeah.
Like did we have like Malcolm?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
did
They were
we
all
have?
there. Yeah. I played.
Malcolm was an NPC.
I played. Who did I play?
Oh, okay.
Mark or.
Yeah. So I was MacDuff.
Yeah.
I think you were maybe
Ross.
Ross.
I was Ross. Yeah, I was Ross.
And then we had a Lennox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, MacDuff, Ross, and Lennox, all of them would be there to
Grace was
Macbeth.
Muriel.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the name of Stephen the animal's character.
I don't remember.
Because I think Lennox was
he was the kid. Remember,
Yeah.
he played the son. He was young.
Yeah.
He didn't have as many abilities. But yeah, it was fun. And he kept saying Professor wanted me to try to break the game. But yeah, but I didn't really. I wasn't up for it. I didn't have it in me that time. Plus,
well, I thought that's why you were trying to burn the forest. That I was really convinced would not have worked. But then he was like, it would have worked.
So I was trying to burn the forest, and then the other PC stopped me. So that's the thing. I knew that was going to happen. Like as soon as I tried to do chaotic things, everyone would gang up on me and stop me because there was too many. You see, when I do chaotic things, usually I'm either by myself, or. And plus, I didn't want to break his game. I mean, if I was super chaotic, I would have like started to attacking Macbeth like right after Act 1. You know,
you're like it's called Burnham Wood. How can I not burn a wood called Burnham?
Well, he said it would have worked because the ashes. I said that it's like ash and embers still works, and he says other people have done it, and that's something else. He's run this so many times. He said he's seen it all. He's seen
everything.
Yeah,
you know. But now that you say that, there was something that we did that I remember him saying, like nobody's ever done that, and I can't remember what it was now. Dang.
No, we did a few things that he was like, no one's ever done that. There was a couple.
Okay.
Oh, what did we do? I forgot what we did. Oh, it had something to do with maybe with you and your kids or something. I don't remember. But I don't remember. I
Yeah.
don't remember what it was. But anyhow, so we played that with Professor, and
Yeah, that was a blast.
it was fun. And then I don't remember what happened after that night.
Yeah, Saturday night after Deathbringer.
It's all
I mean,
blur. I think I went.
I'm really
that.
blanking.
I don't remember. I
Oh
don't
wait,
even
that's when we went to the steakhouse.
I thought that was. Oh, that was Saturday night. Oh, okay.
That was
For some reason
Saturday.
I thought it was Sunday night. Okay. Oh no, because I left Sunday
Yeah,
night.
so
Okay.
we had like a little break. I
Right,
saw
so we
a
had
little
a
bit more
break.
of the expo hall with Stephen the Animal. Grace went to another presentation.
Right.
I don't know what you did during that time before
So I
dinner.
was hanging out with the professor, and we were walking around, and then what ended up happening was they couldn't find a place to eat, so I made a
Yeah.
reservation for 10 people, which it's like 10 people near the expo because it was still raining. With it's 7 o'clock, and it's hard, but we found a place, and then it was a Brazilian barbecue place, which was interesting.
Delicious.
And yeah, we went there, and who was there? Was us? Who was it? Nerdarchy? Was that who that
Yeah.
was? Nerdarchy.
Dave from Nerdarchy.
Yeah, Dave from Nerdarchy, and he played MacDeath with us, by the way, as well. So
Yeah,
Dave
he was
from
Lennox.
yeah, Dave from Nerdarchy, his wife, and then the rest, all the other ones,
Yeah,
and then we.
Everybody we've already talked about,
Yeah, yeah.
except Matt Mercer. He wouldn't come to dinner.
No. I didn't. I lost his number somehow. But then, yeah. So we went to Brazilian barbecue and ate way too much food. Way too much food. Did we eat too much food? I think we ate too much food. And
What? Eating too much food at Fogo de Chao or wherever it was?
Yeah, it was one of
Never.
those.
No one ever does
well,
that.
it was all like buffet, all you can eat. So we just kept eating, and then we
Mhm.
had dessert too. And we were there quite a while actually. And then
Yeah.
we went back and played more Wingspan with the professor. I went back and played more Wingspan.
okay.
That's his favorite game, and I like
I didn't know
Wingspan a
that.
lot. So we played that. And then Sunday, what'd you do Sunday?
Sunday was the day that I like relaxed the most. Basically, that's when I finally saw the expo hall.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was interesting because it's like the hall seems like it's this near infinite like giant room, but then you realize, oh, like a whole third of this space is actually set up for people just playing the games.
Mhm.
Like everything past a certain point
Yeah.
was just tables basically. So we did get through that quicker than I expected. And then I feel like, and then we went to a panel by the guys of Mage Hand Press that was just about like making monsters interesting.
Oh,
And,
that's my buddy. Yeah, that's who I was hanging out with a
Nice.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a really, really cool
that's
panel.
Mike Holt.
I'm not like super, like I know some of the books they've put out, but I'm not like super familiar with their work. Both these guys, like they kind of alluded to the fact that they've given this talk before, and you could tell then because it was just so. I mean, first of all, it was great. Like it just felt really informative,
Oh.
and like it clearly involved like actual academic research.
Here's all
there's
his
that-
books.
Oh,
he gave them all to
I
me.
literally, Grace and I got the feline ones,
Yeah.
and I think I have a digital copy of Valda's.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, they were great. Their talk was really great, and then after that, I think that might have been kind of the end of our day.
Mine was well, people who were here on Monday know what my day was like, because so I got up, I had another meeting and had some more meetings, and then I met Professor Dungeon Master and his wife, and we walked around the hall a little, we got lunch, and we got cheesesteaks, because that's what you got to do when you're in Philly. So I went back, and then and the place we were sitting, which was where we played MacDeath, was only like 3 doors down from the D&D VTT demo. And then I went over
Was it
there,
okay?
and I got in and started talking to them, and did
Nice.
that we did that before lunch for about over an hour. We were hanging out playing the VTT demo. And then after lunch, I was like, I'm going back in there and I'm going to talk to them more and just hang out. And I did. So I was hanging out with them and talking to Chris Cow and other members of the team. And I got to play the demo for like hours. And
Nice.
then at
I
the
mean,
end, we were just talking, just like sitting around. We literally sat around and just talked for like an hour, just about stuff.
Yeah. So what was the demo like? Because I did very briefly. I didn't get to like see the demo or anything, but I did very briefly on that Thursday night talk to Chris Cow and Kale Stutzman.
Yeah,
I think
Kale.
is the
Yes.
other
Still
like
spin. Yep.
dev.
Yep.
And they said that it's been updated since the summit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which was when I got to see it. But like,
It was
I
the
didn't,
latest version. It was brand new. It was like only
Cool.
from that week, and I liked it a lot. I mean, you can watch the video from Monday, where I spent 2 hours just answering questions about what I thought of it and how it worked. And I thought it was very good because it's not doing a lot. Like it's actually quite lightweight, which is probably what you need. It does
right.
It doesn't do a lot, but what it does very, very well. And I was
That's good
actually
to
kind
hear.
of impressed. And it was very fast. It was smooth. You know, it was very easy to use. It had the same controls as Baldur's Gate 3, you know, so you have people who knew how to use it right away, you know, and it looked good. It's obviously very far along, a lot further than I expected. They said it's ready. It's going to launch next year. They're starting testing now or very soon.
Wow.
They said they wanted to start testing in December, but they didn't quite make it. But they said they're going to start doing, you know, private/public testing, beta testing, like soon, like in a month or two. Like they're going to start really soon. So, and they said it's coming out next year, like early. I think it's coming out like, you know, summer. So I was like, all right, you know, what do you know? And it looked it. I mean, I've done professional game design for a very, very, very long time, and from what I can tell and from where it was at, it was pretty far along. Like it actually was very close because they're sort of at
Wow.
the final stage of cleanup and adding effects and from a development point of view and talking to them, I know how far it was, and it looks like it's pretty far. And there's other parts that still need to be added, but that's a different team. And I ironically also know the people from that team, and I was talking to them on Thursday night, and they're the ones building the marketplace. That's a little bit more hush hush because that's still under NDA, but I was able to find out where they are with the marketplace, and it's getting close. I mean, I have a feeling like everyone's like, I don't know how they can make next year, and I'll be the first one to say I don't know how they can make next year, but it looks like they're going to make next year. I'm like, I can't believe it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be
Yeah.
perfect, but I think it's
So
going
you
to be
think all this stuff is going to basically launch at like the same time, like the player's handbook, this,
close.
and
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to have everything. I mean, they got to get all the monsters in, and there was only a small number. You know, maybe there was like 50 monsters, but they did tell me that they hired a whole bunch of new people to do the spell effects, to do some of the more animations, to like start. And that's data entry, and data entry is fast. Like you can get people to do data entry. You know, so as long as you have the tool sets. And to be honest, for those of you who used to play Warcraft 3, if you remember that, way back in the day, and StarCraft 2. I was at Blizzard, and they were, and this is no joke, when I was playing Warcraft 3, they were still implementing the actual single player story with only like 4 weeks left. It was like, yeah, we launch in 4 weeks, and we're halfway through implementing it. I was like, talk about last second, you know, like there was like the last second, but they added that story so late in the development cycle. I can't believe it actually made it to launch, but that's how it works because you spend all your time building the tool set, and the tool set was pretty close to done, and then actually adding the monsters and like the data, that is done at the very last second, and that's where they're at. They're at like, okay, data entry time, which is that's a good place to be. And they're gonna have to do like real stress testing and real network testing, and that's where the beta test will come in because it's one thing to test it, and it crashed, but they crashed because it was the latest build, and they know why it crashed because we were like clicking on something that wasn't finished and it was causing an error. So. But I did get to see even the desktop and see how they launched it and see the startup and all that stuff. So, but I think it's all coming out, man. It's like it's going to be damn close. I'll tell you that much. I mean, as I said, I think they have a long way to go because, I mean, if you look at look at Foundry. I mean, even in 1 year, Foundry has changed a lot. You know, I started using Foundry with Battlezoo stuff version 9. and that's when I was starting to implement our own items, and we were going back and redoing them because version 11 is so different, and they're up to 12 now. They're going up to 12, and all this functionality that wasn't there, so we're continuously updating and fine-tuning our own stuff. So it's the same thing. It's like it's going to come out and work, but then that's only the beginning. There's going to be another 50 versions after the first one. So
Yeah.
But yeah, then and then I was exhausted. Then I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna drive home 2 hours in the pouring rain, and I actually had to pull off on the side of the road and take like a power nap for like 20 minutes because I was so tired. But welcome to a convention. So what did you think after it was all said and done? Standard.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think I got the royal treatment to some extent. So it was a great time, and definitely was busy. Definitely still felt exhausting. Like by the end of it, I'm glad I didn't, plan too many things, because then it's like if I had something planned Friday afternoon, like I wouldn't have been able to go to the playtest. Like for Daggerheart, that was like randomly came up. And I'm glad I still got to play some games, like not only Daggerheart, but then also Deathbringer, which is something I'm looking forward to for a while. So, we didn't play that DCC Thursday night, but next time we'll have to arrange that.
I might come by. Maybe. I mean, you were so close. I can even just set something up. We can meet up somewhere halfway.
It's probably true. I mean, you're in New York.
Yeah,
right?
I'm in New York, and like between you, me, I mean, all those guys are near. They're all in the tri-state area.
Yeah, we could basically have the same group.
Yeah, we could have the same group and just meet up.
Easily.
And I'd be happy to do that, and we just play. And Professor loves DCC, so if we had like Professor, you, Grace, and I'm sure I can round up round up one of my buddies, one of my players there too, and there you go. Can play a DCC game and kill you all. But it was a good time, and boy, the only thing I'll say is if you think that's crazy, Gen Con is way worse, and Gen Con is like, because this one I actually slept. The weird thing is I think I walk a lot, but I actually walk less in Gen Con, even though Gen Con's very spread out. The biggest issue with Philly is the convention hall is gigantic, and the hotel, at least my hotel, was half a mile away, which was annoying, because then I would have to go there. If I ever wanted to go there and come back, it takes a while. I mean,
ours was like just far enough that we felt okay, like Ubering back and forth.
Yeah, mine was, I couldn't even Uber because there was so much rain. It was like, if you tried to Uber, like even remember when we went out to dinner, they were like, oh, it's Uber. I'm like, dude, you can't Uber. And there was that, and the parade.
When we went to that, it was definitely...
It would have taken you 2 hours to go 6 blocks, and then there was the Christmas parade on top of it. Did you see
that was like the rain. There was a parade, and I don't know what part of Philly it was in, but there was also an Eagles game letting out that night. So it was like, don't even try to drive.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. So that's why we're like, you had to walk. But yeah, so every convention is like that, Bob. Or you just hang out with.
Right, I can't wait to run into Matt Mercer at breakfast.
Yeah,
every
Matt
time
Mercer. You're gonna see it. That's all it is. You're gonna be hanging out with nothing but celebrities.
To, another
he comes with your ticket for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, at Gen Con, you actually will see everyone because everyone goes, and they usually have parties. That's what happened last year. So you will see everyone. It's funny.
Yeah, well, if anything, I would say that's kind of like the thing that I'm hoping for is like a get together similar to basically what like we established over the weekend, but like one or more things like that with other groups of people. That's like maybe more like small group settings where you can actually just hear each other talk, because like that Thursday night was really cool. But it was just like kind of surface level with everybody, because you're like kind of hopping around and saying hi and like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you forever. And then like, and then you see somebody else. And then that was kind of the whole night. And it was just so hard to actually like try to sit down and hang out with people. So I'm glad we got to do that.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking forward to at a future con, is like seeing some of those same people, but in a different context where we can actually talk or maybe play something like we did.
Yeah, at Gen Con, that's exactly what we did. We'd meet up every night at dinner with different groups of people. or even lunch. Like we always.
That's what I got to do is like plan the meals with people. I think
correct.
I feel like that's the key.
But I usually do that. So as long as you talk to me, because I'm usually the one who's planning those. No, seriously, I'm the one who usually plans the meals, and then usually between me and Professor, because he'll also send out the text, and then we coordinate everyone. Because then that's what we did. But then it would be different people every time. So, because then it's funny because Kelsey Dion from Shadow Dark, she was at Gen Con, and it was her first con in like 20 years. And she had your experience, which was the hanging out with everyone experience. And then she went to another convention like a few weeks later, and no one was there she knew. And
it was normal.
And and she was very depressed. She was like, oh, this sucks. I don't know anyone. I was like, yeah, that's what the normal conventions are like. That's why you got to go with either friends or at least a friend, if going completely by yourself is a little hard, which often stinks, which I've had to do too many times, but that's how you meet people, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. And that's how you meet Bob. So next time you're at a convention, you see Bob, just walk up to him and say, hey, let's still go play a game, and I'm going to spend all day with you. He won't mind whatsoever.
Well,
right?
I think the plan is like do, especially for like, well, I don't know if it'd be possible at Gen Con, frankly, but like at like PAX next year, I want to do something similar to what Runehammer did, which would just say like, hey, for the next couple hours, or like, tell everybody ahead of time. But for a couple hours on whatever day, I'm going to be at this bar or restaurant, come say hi. And that way, I think it's like, that would just be a really cool way to meet people. Not that I still had a great time, like running into people like all over the halls of the convention center. But I think, again, it's like then kind of giving more people a chance just to sit down and hang out for a while. And that was really great. So
yeah, the meetups,
something like that again.
The meetups, that's what we have.
Yeah.
We have like a meetup and you're like, yeah, I'll be here for this time. And Ned from Nerd Immersion did that. I forgot about that. We went over to see Ned in the middle of MacDeath, because he was having a meetup and he was giving out cookies and coffee. And we got up there and he just ran out of cookies. And we were like, oh, dude, man, that's the whole reason we came over. We wanted a cookie, but oh well. But yeah, you could do that. That's the other way you do it, or you run a booth, which I might be doing. I don't know. Problem is I actually have product to sell, so I probably want to have booths to start selling them, but there you go. So your next con, you got to go to Gen Con, man. Gotta go.
It's definitely going to be Gen Con. I don't know if there'll be something before then, but I'd like to. Just got to find the right one.
Yeah. Well, that one's just worth it because first everyone's there. And like literally everyone, and it's also just fun. And we play a lot of games. That's the thing. It's not that we played. Let's say last Gen Con, we played a pickup game of Mothership out of nowhere, and then we played a pickup game of Cobalt Ate My Baby with the creator, and that's always fun. That's the other thing. And when we usually end up playing with the people who like either make or design the game, that's the best part about Gen Con. Is that like you did? You're like, oh, you want to play Daggerheart with the designer of Daggerheart?
Yeah. Of
course,
and
I'm spoiled.
Deathbringer with the designer of Deathbringer.
Right, and I'm spoiled because I get to play Pathfinder with the writer of Pathfinder. Although I don't get to play with him. What I do is I play, and then when I have rules questions, I text him while I'm playing. And then say, hey, Mark, how does this rule work? And he tells me.
You played with me the one time when I was running, and you were playing the iconic.
I know. I was trying to break it,
Rogue.
But then I was a level 0 character, and he would have like killed me in like one hit, so I had to be careful. So, oh well, you can only do so much. But yeah, we did play once. I played Starfinder with you.
Yep.
So we've done a little bit of that, but
yeah, you run before and I've run before. We've both done it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. Hurry up, Bob. Write a game.
Build a world.
I know. Build a world. Where's your world? Come on, we're all doing it. We're all
Grace destroyed all of them.
I know. So. I know. Grace lived up to her name. I'll say, boy, she was aggressive in MacDeath. I'll tell you. She
accidentally killed technically, but then didn't really kill Kill another player character.
Oh man.
Oh, so Starfinder 2E at PAX. Ironically, I didn't. It was being run there. I went by the booth a few times. I didn't see anyone I knew because there was a lot of new people there. And I didn't really have enough time, and it was going to take a while. And quite frankly, I can get those rules whenever I want. So I didn't feel the pressure, if that makes sense, to play Starfinder 2E. It's that, if I really want to play it or get it, I can. So I will try it because I'm very curious to see it, and that was the first time they were running it. It's that they were actually playing Starfinder 2E with the Pathfinder 2E rules. A lot of 2Es, so I definitely want to check that out because I love Starfinder quite a bit. I mean, we played a full adventure path from beginning to end, but I did feel like the economy had some real problems. I mean, there were some issues with the game, and I did feel like that definitely needs a version 2. And now it's using the Pathfinder rules, which I already know. And I think the Pathfinder rules are genius. Therefore, I'm very excited to try out Starfinder. I just didn't have
Sounds
time.
very exciting. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. What are you looking forward to, Bob? Did you get anything? Any swag? Anything you're gonna try
I
out?
definitely did. Yeah, I mean, I'm like blanking a little. I have this giant foam D20 that I bought.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people have that too.
And I was walking around with this on Sunday. But yeah, Sunday was the day we like bought all the things we bought. Grace got a couple sets of dice. We got that Mage Hand Press Fantastic Felines book.
Mhm.
She's currently playing a druid, and she was like, "Will you let me transform into any of these things?" And I was like, "Yeah, as long as the CRs are like okay."
Mhm.
So she was like, "All right, I'm definitely getting this." I bought a solo, more of like just a kind of choose your own adventure. There's no dice involved,
Mhm.
but a solo like horror book, like walkthrough thing that's based on like a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories. I bought, what else did I get? Yeah, she got a book that was like kind of a zine with a bunch of tables and ideas for taverns and encounters in taverns. Uh, and and I bought a hard copy of a 5e Goodman Games module that I ran like years ago. It was one of like 2 modules that I used to start basically my first like big campaign in 5e, and I only had a digital copy of the one, so I got a hard copy of that. And it was funny because the writer is Chris Doyle. I don't know if you've met him.
I know Chris.
Yeah, he told us about how he wrote this module in like a very short time frame because it came out at like basically the launch of 5e, and Joe Goodman was like, "Hey, we need a 5e module like stat." So he wrote this module like really short to so they could be able to sell it at Gen Con that year.
Actually, I remember that.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the other things that I bought, but yeah, I had my eye on a bunch of things, and like real soon, I'm going to be getting like the hard copy of Shadow Dark. I think that's coming this month. It should be shipping out to people who backed it.
Too.
So I'm really excited about that. And I did play a little bit of that during October. I ran a session. That's really fun.
I haven't played it yet.
And
I've been talking to Kelsey. We kept trying to bully Kelsey into running Shadow Dark for us at Gen Con. But we'll get her to run because that's
oh yeah.
Gotta have she was actually going to be on the show, but she's not only did the books come in, but she's moving. So she's like she's like, Steve, I'm really busy. Can I come on in January? I'm like, that's fine.
Okay.
But I'm
well, yeah, definitely. I don't know, maybe in like, I don't know when things settle down for her. If it's like January or something after the books come out, she'll probably be a lot more relaxed.
Yeah.
And that'd be really cool to hear her like trying to kind of talk about the whole story of it.
Oh yeah. She's been on the show before. Now she actually has the books. We can talk a little bit more about like the reception now that people are actually going to start getting them and using them. So, speaking of books, actually, our book is supposed to be in the warehouse. Here it is. Oh, Strange and Unusual.
Even got one of the first ones.
Well, I got all the first ones because I'm the publisher.
That makes sense.
I paid for
I'll
it. I
get
better
mine
freaking
sometime
get
soon
it
too.
I better get it early. But yeah, I've had these. I've had it for about a month and a half. But they're supposed to show up on the 7th at the warehouse. I think that's tomorrow. So once it shows up, once it shows up, I'll start charging shipping and get those books out to people. And we literally just finished. We just finished Jewel of the Indigo Isle, and I'm like, oh, we went from one right to another one. It's like, gotta keep shipping, never stop shipping.
It's one thing after another, Stephen. There's always something else.
It never ends. Never, ever ends. But
that's what happens when we decide that we want to make, like, it over 30 books a year with 2 people.
Well, 36 books, 2 people. I think it's something like, I did the math. It's like maybe 3,000 pages worth of work or something like that.
I don't know how you have time to do these streams.
I don't know.
Steven and I do a lot. Steven, like, is just always doing something. He never stops. And I do sometimes stop, but I do things really quickly. And so between the 2 of us, we just do a lot of things.
Our superpower is speed. Like Mark
Yes.
and I are, I mean, it's not to pat ourselves on the back, but we are beyond fast. Like, as fast as people think they are, we're very fast. Mark can write incredibly fast. I already laid out 2 books in 2 days. So give me an idea. Like, I already finished Angels, and I just about finished with Angels Pathfinder yesterday, that book, and then I'm about to finish up tonight. I'll finish up the 5e version. So it's 2 books in 2 days. There you go. But I don't know. You know, we clone ourselves. You know, that's how we do it.
Steven's dog helps.
I know. She's getting her medicine right now. And she's walking out. There she goes. Bye. Bye, Zoe. Well, otherwise, I think we have beaten this topic to death. And
I think you went through everything. There's some really interesting stuff. I was very excited to hear the Daggerheart details from Bob's playthrough.
I gotta get into the. I was supposed to be in the playtest. I gotta get in touch with. Well, you know them because they sent you the freaking book, Bob. You got like the Candle Obscura from.
I mean, that was another random thing. That was literally from a message on Twitter. Somebody from Darrington Press was like, "Hey, would you want a review copy of this book?" And I was like, "Obviously, yes." So,
it's like, well, you can give it to Bob. It was like 160,000 subscribers.
Yeah, we don't have quite as many.
17,000. But
well, they'll give you 1/10 of the book.
I know. We'll give you the first
words.
chapter.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, like, for perspective, like, I do literally get at least 1 email, probably every other day, from someone who has created something who wants to send it to me, and I say no to almost all of them.
Oh,
so yeah, because it's just I would never, like, that would be my whole job. Like, there's no way I'd be able to do anything else. So yeah, when something comes along that it's like, hey, I was actually looking forward to this, and I know people will want to watch a video about it because they have heard of it and know it exists, like, as a bare minimum kind of bar. Yeah, that was an easy one to say yes to.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, it says, so Death's Pit 00 said, I imagine Steve is one of those guys who goes on vacation and can't stop thinking about work enough to enjoy it. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much me. It's hard. It's hard. Well, when you work for yourself, and we have such a small company, ironically, with my bigger company, when I didn't have to really do anything and it was kind of well-oiled machine, I didn't think about work at all because they took care of it. But the catch-22 is like, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. Not everything, but the stuff I do. Yeah. So you end up like working all the time. But I kind of like it. It's like, if I'm not working, there was several times in my life where I didn't work and I was bored out of my mind. So I don't know what else to do. So at least we're making fun things for fun people. That's exactly. Like, at least people get to see what we're making. So 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day. Yeah, that's about right. It's 7 days a week, pretty much all day, all night. But then I sit here and I'll play a video game for an hour, and then I'm like, wait. And then I feel like, okay, I played enough. Time to go back to work. And I don't know. But this is work. You're like, when can you do these streams? Because it's work, baby. We take less time than you do, though. So we just did 2.5 hours, and now we have 2.5 hours, and I have a week's worth of content. You'll do a 10-minute stream, and it'll take you 20 hours to edit that thing, right? So
yeah, I would say, like, literally my whole last 2 days were creating the video that went up today.
Right.
So,
so right, it's 2 days to create a 9-minute video. So
yep.
for us, we just bring ourselves and we just say the things, and then that's about it. Other than that, Stephen is now snipping
I'm
out
cutting them
the early topics into little mini videos for people.
Yeah. I've been watching a bunch of those.
Yeah, people like those. And I listened to that when I cut them up. I listened to that at like 300 times speed. So it's like 300% faster. So it goes it's I got to concentrate, but it's like, because I just need to know where to cut. I don't need you to hear what I said again. So, all right. Well, thanks, Bob, for coming on once again. I said we got to get
always
Grace
glad to
on.
have you on here.
I know we got to get Grace on, but she's busy during the day. So.
Yeah, she literally like got home from work like 20 minutes ago. I don't know if I had, that's why I muted myself for a second. I don't know if you saw that.
No, but that's
I
funny.
noticed
because
that
every day like she'll come in, she'll just go like hello, like kind of as a joke because like I'm always here.
Yeah.
And so I made sure I was muted when I heard her coming up our apartment stairs.
Because it was hers too, I believe. And she had I was talking to her a lot, and she had a pretty interesting perspective of the con.
So yeah, some other time,
sometime in the future. So we'll be here next week. I don't know who we're gonna have on the show. I actually have kind of a waiting list now, believe it or not. People want to come on the show. So
getting into the holidays, people are gonna be busy and stuff. So
yeah, but it's the opposite. I have people who was like, "Oh, can I come on? Can I come on?" I'm like, "Okay."
I'm sorry, I misheard. Okay.
No, it's the other way around. Yeah, but
everyone's
like,
like, it's
free.
the holidays. I got time on my hands.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I'm off. I want to come on the show.
Yeah, it's actually. Well, I'm gonna be away though, so there will be.
Oh, you're gonna be away. Are we gonna do it?
No, next week I'll be here. No, next week I'll be here.
Okay.
We're gonna have it. Let's see. I'm looking at the schedule. Oh my God, next week, but then that's it because I'm gone after that.
Okay.
So I don't think I don't know if there's gonna be one on 2027. Definitely not. I'm in South America the 27th. So. Oh my God, I gotta get my work done. Oh my God, Mark, I gotta listen 2 weeks to get everything done. I gotta go back to work. All right. Well,
there we go.
Go
from work to work.
From work to work. This is fun work. All right. Well, look, I got a new tagline. See if you can fill in the blanks with us, Bob. Here we go. So we'll be here next week with another episode of Roll for Combat live. All right, Bob.
Okay.
You'll know for next time. But
Got it.
see you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.